Ti je rekao treba joystick da nosiš na popravku.
Mhm.
Šta si mu radio?
Pa driftuje mi malo, ništa strašno, ali driftom mislim ništa strašno. Strašno je za ovakve igre.
Izbjegavaš odgovor, šta si mu uradio?
Nisam od likova koji maltretiraju da
Dobro.
lupam i to, ne.
Mislio sam da
Ba
si...
jebi ga verovatno, ne, dođe mi mlađi sin,
Am.
dođe mi Dušicin sin, uzmu malo oni igraju,
Znam.
trkam ja, ba vremenom se jebi ga, nema svako svoj stil, kako bih ti rekao.
Am.
Ali generalno, gledano, meni joysticki zaista traju.
Nightbot. Welcome to my channel.
The actual craft of hand-drawn animation is only barely appreciated by a general audience. The current state of the industry, its face of computer-generated confections and lackluster television frippery, shows a well-oiled machine that is grinding its way into the ground. When someone is asked what they think about animation, they're likely to think of Disney, or the latest video babysitter made by Sony. Others will immediately refer to anime, which in many ways is one of the few places where animation, hand-drawn to some extent, is still crafted. Only far off and in monastic isolation does Richard Williams, the Icaresque Rembrandt of animation, whittle away at the best work being done in the field. Yet this work will most likely not be seen by a large audience. Williams' service to the art form has been pervasive and cannot be understated, with such works as the animation in Who Framed Roger Rabbit and the monolithic The Thief and the Cobbler. One would think that the knowledge of these films and how they were made would be a bit more common, but not so. Most people organize themselves into niches of a certain field of interest. If there isn't anything in that niche directing them to content outside said niche, they likely won't go in search of anything else. Even when delving into the past, the level of due diligence and research is shallow. Those great classics that are constantly lauded are held as a rite of passage to hopeful film fans and critics. Numbers and famous factoids are thrown around, but often without real knowledge.
Jebeni Nenad ode, cijelu jebenu misiju sam završio, čovječe.
No different
All
than
along.
showing stats about an athlete.
All
or
along
stats
the
for
watchtower.
our engine. It's just another way of showing how much or perhaps how little you know. Ultimately, it is useless for the art form. On YouTube and other social media sites, this is far too evident when mention arises of 1988's Akira. Yes, we've all heard this tidbit.
The film is comprised of over 160,000 single pictures
and is comprised of over 160,000 individual animation cells.
True, but then this is usually followed by...
The film, unlike most anime up to that point, was animated on ones. 24 complete drawings for every second of animation that appears on screen.
When you have to draw like 24 times in every second of a 2-hour movie,
its biggest claim to fame is, of course, its true 24 frames per second presentation. A first in animation and a feat that we've rarely seen matched in the 30 years since. Otomo's masochism shone once more as his team drew 24 individual pictures that come and go in the blink of an eye, whilst rival animation powerhouse Disney boasted a meager 12 in comparison.
Two disclaimers first. One, I admire Akira quite a bit as an entertaining and inspiring experience. Second, if only one or two had made these errors, I wouldn't have cared. That's the internet after all. But it seems almost endemic to discussion of the film online. Akira's animation is undoubtedly impressive, and some scenes are jaw-dropping. Yet only a few scenes were animated with such estimated fluidity. Most of the film was shot on 2s, that is, 2 frames of film per drawing, or 12 frames per second. Even common still are some cuts shot on 3s, 1s, 24 drawings per second, are reserved for the action scenes or certain impressive close-ups. 1s have always been used as a method of punctuation in anime, to emphasize something as important or showcase talent. In this way, anime modulates its frame rates to bring more impact to a scene or shot. Akira had an immense budget, and therefore it has a larger amount of 1s than other anime at the time. Yet it wasn't shot exclusively on 1s, nor could it have been. Another misconception is that Akira has never been equaled in this frame count, or that it even exceeds Disney's. These sorts of statements are merely ignorant of the breadth of animation history and animation process itself. For example, In production at the time of Akira's release was The Little Mermaid, which contains much more consistently smooth animation than Akira. If we are going to place importance on frame counts, I'd like to point out that it isn't so much how many drawings you have in a film, it's all in the timing and spacing. I said you couldn't shoot a whole animated film on ones, and this is why. When all the drawings are shot at the same frame rate, then movement takes a mechanical nature, especially when there is a very clear indication of where the keyframes are. Think back to early rubber hose style animation.
Get some.
Even The Thief and the Cobbler, the most truly impressive and smooth animated film ever made, was not shot solely on ones. Twos are needed to pause or slow down the motion, allow it to breathe, so to speak. Another essential ingredient is spacing. This is how close in position one drawing is from another. Often, to smooth between actions, there will be more in-betweens toward the end of a movement around a keyframe.
So it isn't like a robot.
Otherwise, you get stiff, starty-stoppy animation. This happens frequently in anime, either from style or lack of training, or, as emerged through the work of Mitsuo Iso, in-betweens are foregone altogether. Akira does offer good use of timing and spacing in some areas, while in other places the attempts fall short, probably due to different studios tackling different scenes. Doubtless, it is still the most impressive anime feature in terms of sheer numbers. I believe what is most impressive is the richness of the cell art and the final product that have deservedly earned Akira its fame. And its merits are not just in the animation, but also the aesthetic coherency in the way characters blend into the environments, as well as striking and vibrant color palettes. Prior to making this video, I watched Akira for the first time in a couple years, and was once more amazed and enamored by its look. If I come across as contrarian or a downer, I don't mean to, but there are times when misinformation needs to stop, and it can often be easily remedied by a brief bit of research. Also, I wouldn't put too much supremacy in the 160,000 cells factoid. Consider this. The Nutcracker suite of Fantasia contained around 20,000 cells for the Dance of the Reeds segment alone,
We
in a
received the order.
125-minute
Our
film.
company has been called
This
away
puts
on
the
a
number of
mission
cells
for
for
the
the
light.
film around
I know
500,000.
that, like the
Even
others
Snow
who
White
have
had
been
about
called to serve,
250,000.
we
There
will
is a
not
wide
return.
world of animation out there, and
We
tossing
have
around
already
hyped
given
stats shouldn't be the
everything
only
to the
reason for
church.
investigating on our own.
Must we give
We need to
up
remember
our
that
lives
frame
as
counts
well?
are not always the most important things about animation. It often comes down to the drawings themselves, how well they're used in time. Akira excels in its level of detail, and often in its animation too. Unfortunately, for some people, frame rate is everything, and some even end up destroying the look of pre-existing animation with a cultish craving for the almighty 60 frames per second. This is madness. Animation is the art of moving drawings, the designs and characters, and how the animator puts his artistry into each available frame. It is not a video game or documentary, and it certainly isn't live action. An art form is at its best when it isn't trying to be something else, something outside the breadth of the realm it encompasses.
Our new recruits are proving themselves strong. I've grown fond of one, Knight Soliana Costa. Her devotion to the faith could cast even the darkest shadow of doubt from anyone's mind. It's easy to talk to her about those I left for the calling of the light. She had to leave her family too, a son.
We got separated. My friends were cut down. I won't last on my own. Is there no end?
much gets past me.
Thank you, Wanderer. Without you, I'd be dead. I think I can manage from here. Please, take this.
Šta ovo pečuje 58 gigabita, 50 majke mu jebem.
Već ti je 350 megabita. Ako si mislio na 5 Vexel 2.
Ne, be, na Helldivers.
Come back if you need work.
Neki file prepakuje. Update je bio 3 gigabita.
3,5 gigabita, on prepakuje sve fajlove, jebem ga.
Pa otpakuje arhivu i... razumeš?
Very nice. It seems you're very nice. Oh, bad luck. Try again. Until next time. Oh, bad. Fair bitter. It seems you're... until next time.
Ilija, si tu?
Ja ako nisam tu.
Ajde uđi bre čoveče u Diverse.
Čekaj samo da otvorimo. Šta je
Ajde, ajde. Ajde, slikom sam u igri, ajde.
Sa slikom si u igri? S kim? Dve stvari, da nije invazija, a ako nije invazija, da nije onaj novi Warbond. A Nenad se ne računa, Nenad pakuje, prepakiva igru, već satima. 3 GB, ja update. 3,5.
Ovo je, to koliko misli. Piše još 5 sekundi da bi treba. Installing files. Šta sad instaliraš, mamuti, oni novi. Što ti se treba 15 minuta?
Ne.
5 minuta.
Tačno.
4. 2.
Sve neki nestrpljivi. Nešto pogoditi ko je juče igrao sa Milanom i sa ovim Borisom Makićem. Hunt. Da se kladimo.
I tried to convince Sonia to leave with me. I told her that her son would rather grow up with a mother.
Okay.
And we could start over, away from this frozen wasteland. She refused. Soliana said to run would be to abandon the light and a better world for her son. Perhaps she's right.
bless you.
Kud sad?
Šta su klonovi UI scaling, da?
Ne, nego možeš da dodaš u config file, a uklonili su UI scaling iz game opcije. Možeš da ga vratiš kao ono konzolnu komandu preko toga text file. To sam ja koristio godinama. Da smanjim UI sebi. Da mi oni elementi budu što manje moćnije. To je meni radilo dok nisam instalirao igru. Kad sam instalirao igru, on mi obrisao taj XML file i stavio mi je njihov. A moj je bio editovan već kako treba. Mislim, Jest. Misliš na mog kuma Petra, ne? Da on šalje vojsku.
Da.
Hvala ti.
Ja ima još neke elemenke doma.
Ne.
Pošto si ušao u Hell Driver, da li kako pokrenem gadget mod da radi ili ne? Šta misliš? Nadu.
God of War.
Alo, Nenade.
Čujete, ali sam siguran da će odgovoriti. Ili će da ti kažeš što je. Počeo onda kao Milan govori na ruskom.
Znači, neverovatno. Ja sam oduševljen. Šta kažeš? To već, ja ne znam.
Only that it was once a bastion of the Knights Penitent, the holy order of cathedral knights who patrolled the roads, delivering the light's justice to evil. That is... I see. So my mother was a Knight Penitent. Would she have... Thank you for bringing this to me.
Become the legend, become the Helldiver.
Ladno radi.
Imaš da instaliraš...
Did you walk here too? I will pray for our
Imaš da instaliraš... Slušaj me sad, Nenad, ovo je vrlo važno. Tebi će se osvijeti. Imaš da instaliraš Helldiver International. Da zameniš sve voice line-ove sa onima koje ti hoćeš.
Nemam zadnji dio. Dajte taj invite.
Slavko. Tako pozove čovjeka. Evo sad. Ajde, dolazim ja, ajde. Mlijeko.
To su fascinantno. A da te super miluješ ti, taj glas. Blaženstvo je. Blaženstvo, ono, znaš. Ajde još jednom, Milane, može.
Nenade.
Milane.
Oj, Nenade. Pogledaj ovo.
To je neki mod, a?
Pročitaj šta radi.
A, znam ovo da menja na...
Jezik. Da, da.
A bio bi do jaje da ubace srpski. Kažem, roboti jebem vas u glavu.
Trebalo bi tebe da snime kao...
Kao šta?
Ma ti, kao da budeš neki...
Alo. Kad se smijemo, no?
Da.
A to ti varijanta 2 dana bez trećeg.
A ono, 12, 24, ta varijanta.
Ma varijanta, druže, nema posla i onda je... Ah.
A što mu nisi jebao majku uzeto?
Dobro, meni je isplaćivo sve što se toga tiče. Ponio žito.
I eto da.
Pa kurva Radovi, što ti? Ti zaboraviš za 2 dana i tako. Bio update nešto, jesi vidio?
Jesam. Kaži?
A u stvari reka mi je da kao trebao bi da idem za Sentu po neki veštak, nešto treba me zove. A jebem li ga, ne znam. Vidjet ću. A boli me kurac, čak što više ovo kad ovako, kad dođem, ceo dan ja pišem, razumeš, ja sam došao na dnevnicu, mene boli kurac, da se ja ostao sat vremena. Pa imao sam jedan dan samo da odvezem kamion od Kule do Orbasa na tehnički. To mi je bio sam posao, ja pisao cijelu dnevnicu, druže. I platio mi je to.
S ovi sticima ako sonecima.
Fiksali su neke bugove, si gledao tamo.
She is known for her blunt personality, fully embracing the lifestyle without focusing the discussion around the dark side of the business as many other industry veterans have done. The often outrageous approach has oddly led many to point to her as a positive example of sex work, showing that there are plenty of well-adjusted people in the space. But after going through over 100 interviews with her, I noticed the tough girl facade crack on occasion. She may have just as many problems as everyone else. This led me to uncover the truth behind
Taman mogu da odspavam taj jedan dan da se recharđujem. A verovatno da trebalo bi, ali... Pa neki veštak valjda, sa onim autovozom, onim kurcem.
Vidiš i ovaj merač za tamnu energiju.
Pa jebi, verovatno, ne znam, nemam pojma čime.
Then between 2018 and 2019, O'Reilly began appearing on YouTube.
Decide upon which ne znam u stvari, ne znam kako, u što to, nemam
Ilija, ne znaš šta propuštaš, brate.
Ja nemam
Ne mogu da uđem kod tebe, nemoj nekako šutiraš, nima pojma. Ne znam šta hoćeš od nas. Dubimo na trepojicama, šta hoćeš?
On je meni rekao sa tim kamionom da idem.
One mission more.
Šta nemam pojma.
Allied destroyer has joined squadron.
Pa rekao mi je kao da neću biti ujutru, pa kao zvaću te u toku dana, treba da ideš za kao kurac. Sen. Za sen tu, po veštak.
Mission coordinates locked. Hellpods primed.
Ma normalno isto, mene ne interesuje ništa osim dnevnice, to mene, ma normalno to, pa ne može to, reka bi mu ja, nemoj uopšte me zoveš za pola dnevnice ili. Neću uopšte se cimam za to. A ovako kažem ti, boli me kurac, odem to, bavim, vratim se, idem kući, ono, ne...
Ajde sad budu...
Trebao sam redovno da vozi taj pesak, ali ko znaš vidim da niko ne ide po pesak. Ma nema vezi. Ma to je žuti pesak, Nije to redovni sivi pesak. To je žuti pesak, on se koristi...
Poljoprivredi, možeš da...
Ma ne.
Koristi to kad seju travnjak ili kesiću.
Znaš šta bi ti preporučio?
Koriste ga za, recimo, pravi se temelj, iskopa se ogromna rupa, prvi sloj ide žutog peska, onda se on nabija, kvasi nabija i onda na njega se stavlja sve ostalo što ide. U suštini, suštini kopa se on... Nađe se on lako taj žuti pesak.
Neće ti to pomoći, stani malo. Nemoj svegati. Nemoj svegati radar. Nemoj šestica. Nemoj, neće nam pomoći radar. Nemoj da razmišljaš tome da ideš da farmaš. Neš daleko stići. A ozbiljno ti kažem, neš daleko stići. Znači, već sam te pročitao šta hoćeš. Hoćeš da uzmeš, da sedeš u robote i da odeš da se šetaš tamo. Rasturit će te. Svaki POI ti čuvaju hulkovi, na primjer. Svaki. Mislim, ako mi ne vreš, evo ti odmah kreni.
Ja.
Requesting tac pack. Calling down supplies. New bag. Drop ship. Calling down a support weapon. West. Calling down a vehicle.
Vidjeli smo kako se mu nategao.
Vehicle, northwest.
A šov? Imaš ovdje, a šov? Znaš? Ne zanima te šov? Možda bi trebao. Ne.
Ma da, to je skoro nepregledno se to. Ne pravi mi neku drastičnu kapane premre.
Bih te zamolio da odeš da ubiješ Saurona, ali to je nemoguće. Tač, malo hell bomb.
Da, jedino to.
Bag's empty!
Šta je vagono? Ne, non stop za pojačanje. Znam. Не поднимай.
Marking location, southeast. Found something! Throwing supply beacon. Sample collected. Tagging map, east, 300 meters. Dropping a pin, northwest, 200 meters.
Ja sam skinuo jednu kupolu odatle, sa kvazar Canon, ali nisam vidio drugu. Nisam mogao da gađam, počeo se odolaziti za ovi brodovi.
Ljudi me nešto da ne igraš Path of Exile.
Slavko ga je zeznao.
Pre si failovo, nisi? Skevo, sektor.
Drop him! I'm bleeding out!
Ja ne znam, mene više zamaraju te zamke i to sranje nego...
Rare sample acquired!
Pa što se tiče ubijanja, to nema ni problem, ali... Te zamke nisu kurac.
One life for Super Earth!
Mnogo ih je ovdje. Mnogo ih je ovdje. Nisam siguran da ideš...
Welcome to my channel. Now pozo snake.
Firma me je platila da ne radim to. Tako da... Uzet ću. Iako nisam tražio.
Respect.
Da, verovatno će. Prvo moraš da imaš posao da bi te zamenili. Ne mogu te zameniti ako nemaš posao. Pravi za sivacija. Možeš i da baciš unutra, ništa nisi ništio. Ništa nisi, ma kaki. To sam mogu ja da uništim sa dve bombe. Sa dve ručne granate sam mogu to uništiti. Taj orbitalni laser ti je dobar da uništiš dve baze. Posle ga nemaš. Imaš limit za njega. Da ja znam. Rail cannon imaš neograničeno puta, samo na cooldownu. Ne, to ti input lag koji igra pravi. Nije miš u pitanju. Nije bilo, nisi davno igrao. Imaš input lag na sve što radiš. Bukvalno. Ja ti kažem.
Dropping a pin. West. Far. Sending in an eagle.
Outpost destroyed.
Šta sad?
Mission at 30 minutes remaining.
Found something.
Šta? To ti je deo objektiva.
Okej. Kako je cool lik. Ilija, znači u toku dana će da igraš s njim. I ja i ti. Lik ne zaklapa, car je.
Pozovi ga kao prijatelja.
Da, imam ga kao prijatelja, on je na PlayStationu, znaš.
Što nisam rekao?
Tip, Kenja, isto neki streamer, obožava Helldiverse, priča o lore-u, priča o svemu. Pa zbog toga sam htio da upadneš, bilo bi ti mnogo interesantno.
Odakle ti na čiku mamu ti jebem?
Neze, ja te molim, radi mog psihičkog i tvog mentalnog zdravlja, uzmi polako i diši duboko do 10 broj. Ajde.
Vidiš da te hoću.
Lele, brat moj, on će da se šlagira, čoveč.
On ne zna gdje je došao.
A vi igrate Helldiverse?
Input lag, nešto, input lag.
Lele, krvam jebem izdajničku, pobiću vas sve.
Ti više nemaš ovih robota, tako?
Ja sam...
A šta je ovaj na mapi? Nema ni jednu ruku.
Kao baba Živana kad štuca.
Bez ruku.
Nesrećnici.
Znam ja ko nas juče zgurao u provodu. Da vidim tvoje reakcije, šta ću kažem.
Ništa. To su mi prikačili, ali to je tačno.
Tačna obzervacija.
Koju težinu igrati?
Samo za Nenada šesticu. Kako ne? To solo bi bio znak pitanja. Samo da uđeš i uradiš objektiv i pobegneš. A ne možeš ni pobeći. X puta koliko dođe njih next field.
Posle da stavim ovaj moj deck na dock. Kad budem se probudio. I da stavim ovaj Diablo da se downloaduje polako. I tako ti kažem, Ilija, čekaj da ti pokažem baš da ti bacim i baš.
Da.
Da, Ilija je dužan meni, čoveče. Ilija mi dođe kao minimum.
Mogu da uzmem level 1 karaktera, ako si na to misli. Mislim, boostat ću te tako što ćeš igrati sa mnom, to ti je boost.
Pa jest. To nije samo boost, to je čak i privilegija.
Da, to se plaća. To ti je zadnji laser, ja mislim. 3 ima, ako se dobro sećam.
Wait, Liberty, my arm!
Evo Kočević Vilija.
Hvala vi Slavko Ivanić.
Ma nema šta, min stanje, brat. Ono.
Pitan se što nosi ovaj shotgun sa vatrenom municijom. Pa nije da ne radi, ovdje svako oružje radi, samo neko bolje, neku onako.
Heavy, west, 50 meters. Get some! Get some!
Šta kaže nisi, pa nisam normalno.
Imaš ranac sa municijom ako hoćeš da nosiš. Aj sedi u kola da te otaksiram do checkpointa. To. Ovo što liči na gomilu otpada. Neka bude tako crven, krvlju. Moje krvi. Roboti nemaju krv. Oni duše nemaju. Vidiš ti ovo? Ili ti pare ne trebaju?
Ja se gadim na pare.
Jeste, ja se gadim na pare. Na novac, užasno se gadim. To me tako odbija. Pazi.
Kad porastem, bit ću kengur.
Zatvori mapu ako ti nešto buguje. Da. Puku te bacačem plamena kroz krov zgrade. A tank?
Nenade, sam ja tebi rekao da Ilija uvijek ima neki izgovor, razumeš? Kad te robi.
Tank nisam vidio.
Nisam vidio tanka, ti što si mrtav, to nema veze. Razumeš? Onda dođi i zgadite, razumeš, i kao ups, brate, nisam vidio, znaš, on, ne znam, kasni konekcija, ili tako, neki kurac, ti si mrtav tamo, prosto ti treba, razumeš.
Šta sam ubacio? Ne, ništa nisam ubacio.
Ilija nije nadležan za to, čovječe. Što me vučeš? Bravo Ilija, sad si car, uspio si.
Uspio sam u životu. Može neko da me ubije.
Nenade, imaš zadovoljstvo.
Ako možeš da me ubiješ, bilo bi dobro.
Kako da ne? Samo ako vam se sad zabaguje i SSD, bit će do jaja.
Sve tu.
Evo, Ilija je uspio da izađe, ali kasno.
Uspio sam. Ponavljam. Tri broda plaćanja. Aj, uzmi tu plazma pušku svega ti, ne brukaj se. Ništa, odlično. Odlično je, low ammo, penetration, fire damage. Znam. Možeš li dobiješ onoga podača? Stina.
Pusti čoveka da igra.
Dobro, igraj. Neću još te utičem na odluku ljudima.
Joj, koskije! Star sam čovek, nek idu u pičku materiju.
Jebote koska.
Jebote koska.
Dropping package. Calling down fortifications. Requesting
Stani.
package acquired.
Stani.
Stop, every time.
Dropping package.
Šta hoćeš više od mog života?
Sending in an eagle.
Nema potrebe. Sve je čisto.
All clear.
Imaš 30 ovih raketa, još je stalo 15 komada sigurno unutra u topu. Sve je levo.
Objective located. South.
Ne Slavko, on je radar station.
To je lidar station.
Nije ni lidar station. Ono, sadler.
Pa kad nećeš uporno da markuješ stvari po mapi,
možda markuješ ko hoćeš. To nije to.
I got the terminal.
Nemoj Nenade da se nerviraš, molim te samo.
Već izlazi, znaš.
Pa znam, zato što...
Naiđe na teško, samo teško naiđe i onda ne može.
Nije.
Ja mišu jednu stranu vuču u drugu stranu, ne mogu.
A znaš kako je meni, brate, na drift, kad mi drifta joystick? Dođi mi da ulupam, znači nekom u glavu. Okay.
Calling down a sentry. Requesting tac
Obrće mi se kamera 360 krug ili mi viče, ulazi u auto!
Engaging terminal. Requesting air support.
Ću ja da te prebacim na Steam da bi stavio ovaj kurac za skin.
Bag's empty. Calling down fortifications. New mag. Affirmative, boss. Thank you. I'll handle the terminal.
New bag.
You have ignited the torches of liberty. Extraction awaits.
Little shot of liberty. Tagging map. South. Far.
Goru, a? Vidio sam negdje je bilo bikona usput, znaš?
Ja sam rekao.
Ništa, to nije brže nego ovo što ja nosim. Razlika je što nosiš scout armor. Bro. Davno ti nisi igrao, a? A znam ja šta ti meni pričaš, ali objašnjavam već danima. To što si ti igrao na level 10, to ti sad nisi. Ne, to što balansira igru da bude teža, da imaš više novih igračaka, ali imaš jebene robote samoubice koji dođe na milimetar i što ti ga pukneš, on eksplodira, ubije te. Sam sebe ubije. Pa znam ja šta se desilo, nije problem. Ne pucaš u njega, to je fora. Eno i gore na brdu, gledaj, nesrećnici.
Evo i meni pao. Sad malo. Prva mapa koju sam pao. A zajebo se kupio neki stav s 23 divajna, sad sam ga stavio opet da se prodaje. A nemaš ti taj... Eto, 23 divajna dobija se, znaš koliko bio, oko 5000 damage.
I to malo.
Se prebacimo samo na ovaj kurac.
Dobro da pomeniš ove...
Javeler se, šta? Ma ne, pa meni to tačno kako treba da bude. To nema. A mislim, meni ne nedostaje samo blink, kad bi mogao da još to spirita navučem. Tačnije. A kako bi navuku s čime?
Može i armor da mu da 70 bar.
Ne nosiš onaj fokus. Nego skipte.
Ne zajebao je.
Doduše, ja dok se nosi stavi armor, mogu se da nosim...
Čekaj, Skepter, to je onaj štab što Witch nosi. Njega mogu da stavim u drugi slot sa vantom, jel?
Da.
Jest da će da mi opadne damage drastično, jel da? Pa evo, sad ću baš din koliko će pas bez. Pa padne mi oko 20.000 damage.
I treba da baciš još jednu sad ću da ti momentum, ali malo sam žrtno što li. Juče sam pokupio 2 gema od 20. nivoa Kesiću.
Jo?
Viš da je bio Sam site.
Odmah se to iskoristi. Ma ko je?
Pa da. Bitno je završiti misiju izaći, jel tako slatko?
Ne mogu, ovo mi je odmah.
Tako je.
Ja sam vučem u levo.
Znaš šta me ovo podsjeća? Ovo rade i nubovi level 1, znaš. Ovo radi glavni objektiv, jednu zovu brod izaći.
Da mi nije uspjeh toga da još ubijam.
Ali tjeren bio.
Tvoja misija traje dok imaš ta 2 robota. Kad se potroše roboti i 3 orbitalna lasera...
Jednog sam potrošio.
2 robota imaš.
A sam jednog potrošio.
2 imaš. 30 raketa i 1000 metaka za minigun, to nije nešto.
kurac, jebem ti igru.
Ne bi da se vređamo.
Freedom wins again.
Niko ništa tebi nije rekao.
Znam, kažem, 30 raketa i 1000 metaka za miganje kurčina.
We have at last discovered the vile intentions of the Illuminate cult.
Znači kurčina. Onaj top ima 30 granata. A top imaš svaka 2 minuta.
Hellpods prime. Engaging orbital thrusters.
No.
Orbit
Kad
synchronized.
se igra bagu, pazi bog.
Sad se baguje kad je teško, znam.
A, teško da igramo.
Znam sam. Kako što si ga ubedio uopšte da igram? Znači ja se začudio kako uopšte ušao igra. Sad igra baguje. Isto je radila igra, isto je radila. Jest, ali jest, Slavko. Igramo zadnjih mjesec dana igramo. Mjesec dana igramo.
Ilija, moguće, znaš da je mene od juče zezalo malo promjena oko ovih vožnje kolima, ulazak, izlazak, moguće da je nešto su uradili da ga keca, moguće.
Jeste, on vozi kola.
Znači, ja vučem u desnom i vučem u levom, neću tako da igram.
A pošto si poneo ovako, Slavko, pošto si poneo jetpack, samo te pitam nešto, ovako, znaš da Recoilless ima svoj backpack? Mislim, znam da znaš, samo samo vežbamo za ispit. Ja znaš? I to ima backpack isto, i to ima backpack. Jel znaš? Ne vredi ti bez backpack. Ne znam zašto si ponao to, bro. Čekaj, poneću, vidi, mogu ja bolje, mogu ja da trollam, evo gledaj, poneću ja ovo. I ovo.
Znaš kaži
Evo, evo ja ću ponesem isto. Gledaj, evo. Ajde.
Hellpod launch initiated.
Viš kako se igra šatrijanci. Znači da ličim na onoga kako se zove onaj rudar što dolazi ovdje na kanal. Što nosi 2 transportne torbe u rukama, a treću nosi na leđima.
Brajko.
Jeste. Brian. Samo šteta što ne možemo ništa pozvati. To je...
Još nismo bacili na vrijeme.
Jedino da poginem.
I got the terminal! Engaging terminal.
Objective critical stratagem available.
Reinforcing.
Skačem na glavu. Lego se na bodljika u žicu, nevjerojatno. Promašio si.
Joining the fray.
Thank you. Yeah, with the scout armor, you cannot survive that. No, all good, all good.
Democracy has landed. Calling in reinforcements. Bag's empty. Has landed. Sample collected. Calling in a hell bomb. Throwing supply beacon. Calling down a support weapon.
No, you cannot do it like that. Come. Let me show you.
Follow me. I got the terminal.
Run.
Hell bomb armed. Clear the area.
Run.
Calling in a hell bomb.
Hell bomb request approved. Deploying now.
Dropship.
Automaton facility.
How'd you like to taste of freedom? Tac. Calling down a support weapon.
Deploying equipment package.
Tac pack inbound. Requesting tac pack.
If you're asking about 3 backpacks, you got a couple of backpacks to choose from, so enjoy.
You've got equipment. Feels good. Say hello to democracy. Reloading. Tagging map, southwest, 300 meters.
Sorry, I got trolled hard by the friends, so I brought the 4 backpacks, you know. Reasons.
Boss, southwest.
That
Objective located, southwest, 50 meters. Objective located, southwest.
Available.
Affirmative. Calling in a hellbomb.
Hellbomb.
Throwing
Request
supply
approved. Deploying now.
I think this will probably won't work. Probably.
I'm on the terminal. Hellbomb armed!
Because
Clear
it's
the area!
outside. It's outside of the building. That's why. All good. Oh.
Affirmative.
One step closer to mission completion.
It did.
Injury? What is dropship?
Nice. Nice wall kicks, son of a bitches.
Main objective nearby. Objective critical stratagem available.
Reinforcing! Dropship! Mag's empty! Mag's empty!
Mission at 30 minutes remaining.
Freedom never sleeps!
Negative.
Request approved. Deploying reinforcements.
That was friendly fire.
Joining the fray. Mag's empty! Dropship! Last reload! Calling down supply! Requesting advanced weaponry! Affirmative. Dropship!
Freedom's purity secured.
New man! Calling down a sentry! Calling in reinforcements.
Done.
Democracy has landed. Tech pack inbound. Out of ammo. Requesting tech pack.
Wait.
Deploying equipment package.
Here. Affirmative.
Really?
Dropping a pin. North. Far. Found something. Got a sample. Supplies. Dropship.
Outpost destroyed.
Deck's empty. No, please. Affirmative. Rare sample acquired. Negative. Follow me.
Watch for the mines.
Throwing supply beacon. I've got you. Supplies. Never mind.
Watch for mine. I usually bring a car, but this time.
I'm sorry. Affirmative. Found something! Support weapon. Reloading! Yeah!
Dead at the fucking shovel.
Test.
Yeah!
Me čuje?
Da.
Yeah!
Yeah, it is.
Marking location.
Try it.
Affirmative. Marking location. Cancel that. Never mind.
You hold the aim button to dig. Yeah, that's a solid object. You can dig through the ground. Usually.
Support weapon.
I'll take it.
Affirmative. Enemy patrol. South. Affirmative.
Fuck those guys.
Sending down equipment package.
Freedom. Requesting supplies. Dropping items.
Sending down equipment package.
To ne mogu da stavim ingenuity u ovaj blink, jebo moja mater.
Zato što ga već imaš u streamu i da vidiš što radi.
This support can be socketed into this kill.
Streamu i da vidiš što radi.
Mission at 20 minutes remaining.
Tagging location. East. Marking location. Southeast.
Sending down equipment package.
Marking location. Southeast. Heavy. Thank you.
Epic.
Thank you. Rare sample acquired. Affirmative. Back empty. Heavy. On my position.
Objective critical stratagem available.
Affirmative. Rare sample acquired.
Posle.
You mad? Not today!
Son of a bitches. Throw me down there. Throw me on the flag, thank you.
Šta bi mi Skepter dao još i na damage,
Request approved. Deploying reinforcements.
Affirmative. Democracy has landed. I'm hit! Sweet liberty of life!
Da će mi na K speedu, ja.
How'd you like the taste of freedom? Bag's empty. Bag's last! Last reload! Drop him! Ah! Get some! Get some! Last reload!
Da si ti mogao da staviš ignorit?
Ali ne znam, može li imaš neki?
Nema.
New mag!
Ne znam zašto mi ne da da ga stavi.
Now head to the
That
extraction
was
Ne mogu
tough.
da radim. Ne mogu da radim se tako bez okoda.
Šta?
Calling down a support weapon! Tech pack inbound!
Unsavory deliverance. Welcome to my channel. Cheap viewer S on Vboost Crew Lieutenant SMLQ.
We've got equipment.
Extraction is available.
Tagging map, northwest, 100 meters. Dropping a pin, east, 300 meters. Affirmative. Got a sample.
Sending down equipment package.
Sam site. Okay.
Affirmative. Follow me.
Objective in your position. Mission at 10 minutes remaining.
Kill him! Yeah. Yeah. Sample collected. Rare sample acquired. Heavy, southeast, 50 meters. Affirmative. No! Mag's empty! Mag's empty!
Extraction is available.
Get some! Get some! Have a taste of democracy! Heavy, on my position. Sending in an eagle.
Good job, good job.
Calling in reinforcements.
Request approved. Reinforcements have been launched.
Reporting to the front. Injury? What injury? Mag's empty.
Oh my lord.
Requesting sentry. Dropship. I need stims!
Kako je sistem te rukovoditelj kvalitete?
Freedom never sleeps!
Too many of them.
Sweet liberty! My leg!
Reinforcement budget depleted. Request approved. Reinforcements have been launched.
Point me to the enemy. Spots, northeast. Stemming you!
Sad imam spirita za još jedan broj. Ja moram pronaći tek dobro koji baš
Mag's empty.
Šta s njim?
Njega ubacuješ druge.
Ti si stavio.
Mag's empty.
5 minutes left. Liberty speed your step, Helldiver.
Imaš i Spirit 9.
Ja ću tebe... Jedan, dva, tri...
Šta stavljamo u custom shock i koliko slotova treba?
Custom shock. Ubacuješ lighting control.
Requesting advanced weaponry.
To ti je... Ali možeš da ga ubaciš u taj.
Requesting tag pack. Throwing supply beacon.
Sending down equipment package.
Nije support, jel?
Support weapon.
Nije.
Got equipment.
Kako si rekao?
Lighting control.
New mag.
Additional reinforcement funding approved.
Dobro. I šta još stavljam?
Ide ti elemental focus.
You may proceed to extraction when ready.
I table...
Mag's empty.
Samo sekund.
Ajde.
Tagging location. Calling in extraction.
Coordinates received. This is Pelican 1 returning to extraction radius.
Šta ti je, kažeš?
Heavy, northeast, 50 meters.
Ja, imaš 5 telefona?
Nema.
Mag's empty. Heavy, northeast, 50 meters.
T-minus 1 minute, 30 seconds.
Stavit ću
Cancel that. Heavy, north, close. Affirmative.
Nice.
Marking location. Never mind. Mag's empty.
Inevitable. I-N-E-V-I-T-A-V.
Dobro, dalje.
T-minus 1 minute.
Energy. E-N-E-V-I.
New mag.
Ostatki zadnji.
T-minus 30 seconds.
Šta ti daje?
Last reload.
T-minus 20 seconds.
A nema.
Kupi evo.
T-minus 10 seconds. Landing zone. This is Pelican 1. I have visual on the extraction zone. This is Pelican 1, preparing for touchdown.
Nice.
Objective located. I've got you.
Extraction complete. Pelican 1 beginning ascent. You have maintained our way of life.
liberty is victorious once more.
Podigni blinku kvalitet na 20%, još će ti smanjiti cooldown, recovery rate.
A koliko je inače cooldown?
Jebem li ga, ne znam.
Jebem meni je blink na 19.
Koliko je sekundi, nisam nekako...
The freedom of the galaxy remains in jeopardy. Let us join the fight. Your velo help.
Spontaneous decisions that just kind of fucking randomly happen, unplanned, and they're some of the best decisions that I ever made. But I do think that any girl who's starting off should do mainstream porn, because I wouldn't be Riley Reid if I didn't shoot for all of these hundreds of companies, because they help brand me by like showing me to their fan base and their viewers or whatever.
However, there have been moments when it seemed that Riley struggled with her choice of being in the industry.
And so it sucks. I don't have a mom anymore. I don't talk to her. I miss having a mom. I feel like you can't rewind and you can't go back. I don't have that relationship with her. I don't think I will. And that bums me out.
So the question remains, is she actually living a normal family life following her decade-long adult video career? But before we go any further, here's a word from today's sponsor. Are you sick of always having to go out or paying high delivery fees to get greasy fast food that makes you not feel that well? Well, luckily, Factor has a solution to your problem. Factor makes meeting your nutritional goals easier than ever by delivering fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals right to your doorstep. I like Factor because it allows me to choose meals that fit my dietary needs. You could pick whether you want certain types of meat, or a certain amount of calorie, or a certain amount of protein. It's all customizable, and you could choose your meals based off of what is your preference. On top of that, it's so much more convenient than fast food because you don't have to risk them screwing up your order or having to drive across town to pick it up. I should
Welcome
also
to
add
my
that
channel.
Factor is extremely flexible with how many meals you receive. Some weeks you may need 4, others you might need 18. Well, it's all good because you could just change it with a few simple clicks on their website. As a person who has gotten to better shape over the past few years myself, I can say services like Factor are paramount to achieving your goals. Having something convenient to eat that's healthy and controls your portion is half of the battle when trying to lose weight. So to try out Factor for yourself, use code 50GFM to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. At that price, you really can't go wrong, so I highly recommend everyone watching this video at least give it a shot. Riley Reid was born as Ashley Matthews on July 9th, 1991 near Miami, Florida, and is one of 6 children. She grew up in a trailer and doesn't remember much of her childhood. Riley believes that these missing memories protect her from having mental health problems. Her sister was not as lucky and struggled because of the trauma they endured. She does remember living in quote filth as her parents never cleaned their home. This led the young woman to self-classify herself as OCD due to the experience. When she was in 2nd grade, her mom and dad unfortunately divorced, which was a huge impact on the young girl. The separation was messy and caused Riley to attend 9 different elementary schools. When Riley discusses her parents, it's clear that she has more affection for her father than mother. The young woman's mom was a very disruptive character in her early years. You see, Riley's mother frequently had to visit the mental hospital. During one of these detainments, the father moved his new wife into their house. When Riley's mom saw all of her things being taken out, she decided to steal the kids. She would, as a result, not see their father for several years.
I realized, my mom was kidnapped, my mom kidnapped us. I was like, I hope I don't kidnap Emma one day.
Eventually, Riley was reunited with her father as a teenager. She likely viewed her dad as a more stable individual who was able to hold a job as a computer programmer. However, the more stable parent was strict about certain things, especially the way her daughter dressed, believing that hoop earrings were too promiscuous. As a teen, Riley attended church and even joined a youth group. This influence impacted her as she admitted it caused guilt when it came to her sexual tendencies, and led her to become a hardcore atheist.
I was raised super religious, like in the youth group. Like when I was younger and I masturbated, I would feel guilty.
Including the chaos of her parents, Riley's role models growing up were not likely the best. While still living in a trailer, her uncles would constantly bring around problematic individuals.
I was always around a lot of like sexual activity. I grew up in like a trailer with my uncles who had a lot of girlfriends. Their girlfriends were strippers and they were drug users.
On top of this, her mother essentially let young Riley do whatever she wanted, encouraging behavior that many parents would be horrified by.
But my mom was actually quite the opposite, and she like let us dress however we want. We had like freedom to do whatever we want. Like I was like allowed to do drugs. Like I was allowed to have sex. So I would just be like, Mom, I'm about to do some acid. I'm gonna call you later.
Even though her father had stricter policies, he later opened up to his daughter that he was a sex addict. On top of this, in a bizarre turn of events, after he divorced Riley's mom, he then married his much younger stepsister. This sort of behavior from both parents sparked the teenager to become curious about physical intimacy. When Riley was 15, she became sexually active, performing oral in public places such as bookstores. Enjoying the thrill of being an exhibitionist, Riley wanted to push the boundaries even further. That same year, the young teenager and her boyfriend went to go see a movie. Riley decided that it was time to lose her virginity, though her boyfriend was not as enthusiastic.
Well, that's a tough one because you may be ready to lose your virginity, but maybe your partner isn't, and you should never pressure anyone to do something that they don't want to do. That goes with saying, when I lost my virginity, a guy said no 3 times, and I still hopped on it, so you're asking the wrong person.
Despite the significant other's refusal, Riley does not seem very apologetic about the situation, and many have criticized her for not getting the teenager's consent.
I don't care how many videos I have to make. I will continue to call out Riley Reid until justice is brought to her, the same way justice would be brought if she was a man sitting on the internet bragging.
Many feel that Riley should be canceled for her actions, and it's a double standard that she isn't being held accountable. Though it should be noted that this is one of many stories I will note seems to be exaggerated to fit her edgelord persona. Regardless, this encounter opened the floodgates to the future adult actress's long sexual career. She began attending clubs underage, embracing Miami's sex-positive culture. Reid admits that being around this promiscuous behavior so young led her to engage in orgies while attending high school.
We would go to like our friend's house in the bedrooms and just like, all turn the lights up and pass each other around, or I did that kind of stuff where it would be like one and then next and the other one.
Riley got the reputation of being a very experienced teenager, resulting in girls at her school disliking her because of this activity. Additionally, she stopped having monogamous relationships because she kept cheating on her partners. And while enjoying her casual hookups, she began
vidi ovo, jebeno, vidi ovo, kako me kidaju ovi govnari jebeni, a jebem ti milu majku i govnima ti jebem matere.
Riley mainly stuck to using weed as she was still able to maintain good grades and take high-level classes while getting high in the bathroom in between classes. Interestingly enough, it wasn't the heavy drug use that got Riley into trouble with the law. Rather, it was when she was caught stealing on 2 separate occasions.
I was arrested in Florida when I was like 19.
Having to steal out of necessity was not a one-off moment for the young woman. Her parents seemed to neglect Riley, forcing her to fend for herself. When she graduated high school, Riley was excited to go to college.
Taman se primaknem 5% mi falilo na
The only problem
I
was
umrem,
she didn't have
jebeno
enough money to
umrem,
pay for everything, and when she asked her dad to pay for books, he refused. Strapped for cash, Riley did her best to be financially independent, but ran into trouble when she totaled her car and had no way to attend her classes. On top of this, the teen's parents would not drive her to school, and she refused to take the public bus. It was clear Riley needed to figure out a way to get cash fast to continue her education, since her minimum wage job at a barbershop wasn't going to cut it. This is when she had an idea. Miss Reed had been attending strip clubs with her male sexual partner, who suggested taking part in an exotic dance competition. Riley agreed because it seemed to be the quickest way to earn money. Unfortunately, she did not win the cash prize, but was offered a job at the club, which she accepted. There she did her best to make enough money to fix her car, but ran into some problems. Firstly, Riley admits to not being a very good hustler and would be social with the guys, giving them free lap dances. Secondly, the other girls did not like her and would get aggressive, constantly yelling in her face. Lastly, Riley got mange, a contagious skin disease. This didn't stop her from giving lap dances,
kako me to iskida, tako ka ne mogu
giving her
jebeno.
clients skin-burrowing
Tačno
mites.
mora na kraju da
These
se
compounding
izjebem i
factors
da se
resulted in her
resetujem
job
i
as
da
a stripper
pijem
being a total
ti milu
failure.
mater.
The most money I made one night was like $80. Like, I was a horrible stripper. I was so bad. And so I was like, I'm gonna go back to like a regular minimum wage job because like I'm not good at stripping.
Considering that the average price of a lap dance is $20, this would imply that she was only paid for 4 on her best nights with no additional services. This makes no sense, and I have to wonder if this is just another exaggerated anecdote to tell on a podcast to get herself more attention, which you will slowly begin to tell is a consistent theme. Regardless, the story continues that she was about to get a normal minimum wage job when one of the strippers suggested being an adult actress. Riley figured why not, since she was already so sex-driven.
I was like, okay, well, I'm already really promiscuous as it is. Like, multiple partners, you know, all the time, 3 guys a day kind of a thing.
She signed up to be an extra for the production of Dancing Bears, and was paid a flat rate of $250 with an additional bonus of $50 for flashing parts of her body. On her first day there, she admits to feeling pressure by the production company who asked her to have sex. She turned them down because she was still on her period, but they didn't take a no for an answer, offering her a solution.
And they're like, oh, you could do this thing with the fucking makeup sponge. And I was like, you're psycho. Like, okay, get out of here.
Despite the small hang-up, she enjoyed the environment of the adult industry and was turned on by the performance. Eventually, in 2011, at only 19, Riley decided to quit school completely for the adult industry. This new career path was appealing to the teenager because she didn't have to hustle for money and at only 19 had slept with over 30 different people, figuring it would be a safe way to explore her sexuality. She initially made her debut under the name Paige Riley, but then discovered there was another adult star going by that moniker and transitioned quickly to Riley Reed. She has admitted to wanting to choose a name that reminded people of a girl next door while still sounding sexy. When she started in the industry, Riley believed, like many adult stars, that no one would ever find her videos and that her time in this space would be temporary. For a while, Riley did not experience a ton of success as she struggled to book roles with her first agency. She even tried to be an escort, but found there were way too many risks and soon stopped.
Because it's like, it's illegal as fuck and it's really dangerous and then you're not tested.
After being in smaller productions, she decided to reach out to more prominent companies for exposure. She received huge pushback from managers and other people in the industry, who felt that the upcoming starlet would need to dye her hair and get breast implants to be successful. Riley refused to make those changes, and took an opportunity in LA to boost her career. This is also when she finally admitted to her parents that she was doing adult content. Initially, her father took the matter to the leaders of his church, who encouraged him to cut ties with her. The dad was distressed by this, and ended up leaving that church for another that was more liberal. With the initial approval of her parents, Riley went to LA and got lucky when she was picked up by famous manager Mark Spiegler, who you might remember from my Lana Rhoades retrospective. While she didn't have the stereotypical adult actress body type like Lana, Mr. Spiegler was impressed by her work ethic.
When Riley first started with me, she would work 6 days a week and have 1 day off.
That, combined with her charismatic personality, launched the young woman to success as she won the Best New Starlet in 2012 and Female Performer of the Year in 2014. Her fan base grew, with people waiting in line for hours to meet the adult star at events. She also began feature dancing at strip clubs who paid her a flat rate. Riley's fans thirsted after the young woman who all believed that they had a chance to be with her. And it turns out some actually did, at least according to Riley.
Last time we talked to you, you spoke about a mechanic who fixed your car when you were off the side of the road.
We'd have like Home Depot repair people come, and I would just like.
Hold on a second. What did you just say? What did you just say just then?
Night Uber.
Around 2014, Riley began dating a Jules Jordan, an adult movie director. She appreciated the relationship at first because he understood her line of work and didn't feel like he was in it for her money. Riley was enjoying her ex-film career when Jordan came up with an idea to create her own website. At first, she wasn't that invested in the concept, but allowed Jules to set everything up and post the content that she created. They split the profits 50-50, and Riley began to enjoy the freedom of working for herself. It was from this experience that the young woman began to take a more active role in the management of the site, which upset her boyfriend. Tensions ran high with the couple, and eventually they called it quits. But they still had a business relationship.
Can we change the design of the website to look more like what I want it to look like? And can we like do all these things? And then like our relationship started to fall apart, and he kind of just like, he took and owned it, and he would not give it to me.
Her ex refused to give her control of the site unless she paid him $7,000. Riley felt taken advantage of by Mr. Jordan and refused to pay the sum he requested. She then decided to start up her own website with the help of her computer programmer dad. She then told all of her fans on social media to boycott the original. Jordan had no choice but to give up the successful business that he had been part owner of. Although, looking back on it, I don't think $7,000 is that unreasonable of a price since he did design and run it, but I digress. This event was important since it was the last time Riley would date a person in the X-film world because it messed up her ability to be on set together. Although she was able to get her website back, Riley still was worried that Jules would hurt her ability to book roles as he had an enormous amount of pull in the X-movie community.
When you break up with someone, then you can like never shoot porn with them again. That's like kind of awkward.
Reclaiming her website was a success story, however, the same cannot be said for her love life. In 2015, she dated Josh Mayer of the popular EDM band The Glitch Pop.
I followed him, and he hit me up, and I was like, oh, so like, which guy are you? Because I was like, you know, I didn't realize I was following his personal page.
The pair started off as a friends with benefits relationship, but they eventually decided to date, which went on for the next 3 years. Riley explains that they bonded over their mutual interest in music and love for puzzles. This is also where she may have gotten inspired to start a music career of her own, although it did not have as much success, and continues to offend people today with her use of the N-word.
You ain't heard what I said, go run that back.
For some reason, Riley never received a ton of pushback for her use of the slur. I suppose since she's a quarter Puerto Rican, she technically gets a pass.
She was against the word, Nick? Is that what you're saying?
Super woke.
So are you guys okay if I say the word Nick? That's what
I just realized you said it. That was funny.
You were throwing the N-word around and everything. Wow.
You threw the N-word?
She was throwing it.
Nigerian?
Nigeria.
Unsurprisingly, Riley's rap career failed, as did her relationship with Josh. At first, he wasn't bothered by her line of work, but when Riley ran into financial problems and didn't have enough money to pay her taxes, she had to take drastic measures, which changed up the dynamic.
I shot my first fictional scene because I didn't save my money to pay my taxes. So I was like, I need about 20 grand real quick. How can I do that in this amount of time?
This is where the relationship started to fall apart, as he began to have reservations.
He just like, he wanted me to not do gangbangs, you know, he like felt insecure about like me being in porn and stuff, so like he made me feel like maybe I should quit and stuff. And like he also like, he told me that he sometimes didn't want to kiss me when I came home from work, so like made me like feel like a disgusting person.
Josh's opinions had great sway over Riley, and she nearly quit the industry. But at the end of the day, she chose porn over him.
I almost quit porn when I was with him because I thought I hated him, but then I realized I just hated him.
The now 26-year-old Miss Reed ended things with her ex, claiming to have gotten PTSD from her long relationship. Josh seemed pretty bitter about the split and attempted to sell Riley's couch for money. After they ended things, Riley realized she may never find love due to her explicit line of work. Around this time, she opened up about her complicated love life, stating that men would refuse to publicly date her because it could ruin their careers. With so many men turning her down for a real relationship, Riley began to completely devalue monogamy.
Because I had just broken up with my man, and like I was just like, I'm gonna follow these YouTubers, and like, and like I was just like experiencing with myself and like having fun, but like in that it like showed me how little those people cared about me as like an individual.
At this time, Riley began to have entrepreneurial success with the release of her new adult device. For this, they created a mold of her nether region for the purpose of a recreation that would be sold in mass. I'm not sure if Reed knew how successful the recreation would be, but it was where she got most of her income starting in 2016. Even today, the device is rated as one of the best-selling toys in the industry. This wasn't the only thing she tried to advertise, but it was the most successful. Miss Reed attempted to sell her own spits, but failed because the saliva smelled so bad. With things going well for her financially, Riley took a step into more mainstream media when she began casually dating rapper Lil Xan in early 2018. Yes, this is the same guy whose stomach allegedly ripped open from eating Flaming Hot Cheetos. Riley spoke openly about the relationship and didn't have many positive things to say about their physical intimacy.
He's like a sweet baby. I love him so much.
He don't
like,
throw down.
He's like
he had no idea what he was fucking doing. Just be honest. Hey, good for you, Diego. Good for you. Great job, I'm proud of you, Dad.
Lil Xan didn't even deny his terrible performance when talking to Adam 22, though blamed it entirely on drugs.
I probably was. I was off Xans at the time.
I remember her kind of telling me that at the time as well.
You know, it was like I had a problem like getting it up when you're off Xans, bro. And I speak to a lot of people back then. I'm fine now, but yeah, you know, we had some problems definitely.
Despite his issues, this didn't stop him from sliding into other people's DMs when he was still with Riley. Though I don't believe the adult star really minded much because she found another way to gain more attention. In December of 2018, she was a guest on Logan Paul's podcast, Impulsive.
So like,
Mike
it's harsh. It was so horrible when he told me that.
I would kiss her right now. Mike will kiss you right now. I'm live air. She seems so like, she's like, oh, it's not.
Around the same time, Riley appeared in David Dobrik's vlogs, where she interacted with members of his social group. She even kissed his friend who went by the Dom. In the video, David convinced both Dom and Riley to go into a room together with the expectation they were going to hook up. The two never ended up having sex, but it still made for a great video, and David received millions of views off of her image. However, later on, Riley would share that David made her feel incredibly uncomfortable.
He put me in such a weird, awkward position, especially as like my Riley Reid persona, that I was like, I felt so uncomfortable. But like I tried to find a way around it, and I ended up making it work for me. But like, even not on porn, I was put in this uncomfortable situation because I do porn.
Although she did not have a good experience with David, she did oddly enjoy the company of the Paul brothers. In 2020, she went on to star in a whole story arc for Jake Paul about her dating his editor.
Prodao sam ga pred 15 minuta pre toga. Kad mi je to
She also admitted to hooking up with Logan. This is when she reconnected with her old co-star Lon Rhodes, who began dating Mike Malak, and the two girls filmed content for OnlyFans as well. I don't know for sure if the three of them ever hooked up or not, but there were definitely some suggestive situations that Mike posted about. You see, Riley is not opposed to joining in with couples. She famously reached out to FaZe Banks and Alyssa Violet for a threesome on Twitter. Alyssa responded that she was interested. The one that we know for sure happened involves Adam22 and Lana the Plug. Riley met Adam in 2016 when she came on to No Jumper as a guest. From there, she has appeared on his podcast multiple times and struck up a friendship with him and his longtime partner. The two girls were partying at a club when they decided to hook up with Adam. From there, they continue the relationship with other girls joining in and using drugs such as cocaine to induce these situations, which they filmed for their respective platforms. The three of them have an odd friendship, but they swear there is no strangeness between them.
When you go over for like family den, do you guys kind of have the vibe of like we all?
Never. No.
Oh, really?
Right? But I don't think it's like that with adult stars.
Yeah.
Oh.
Miss Reed became notorious in more mainstream media groups for her crazy persona, which content-hungry YouTubers loved because she was the perfect clickbait. It was in this environment where she met another rapper, Lil Pump, and they began sleeping with each other despite her being 9 years older. Unfortunately, this relationship ended in disaster when Lil Pump wanted to see other women and Riley wanted a serious relationship.
Lil Pump was really nice to me and everything like that, and I'm not like trying to like say anything in regards to that, but he didn't make me feel like loved or cared for or cherished, you know, and like I don't think he's maybe even capable of that in his time of his life.
Giving up on rappers, she went back to dating YouTubers. Many fans speculated that Reed was dating a Danny Raka Raka, as she starred in a variety of his videos. The two never openly stated if they were together or not, and Riley was busy with her own job.
Writing the checks for the men after your bang is like, but like you feel so G and gangster. Yeah. Like, go home now.
Many of these scenes filmed by her production company won awards, and she was even asked to take part in a documentary about her life called I Am Riley. In the movie, the adult star answers a variety of questions, some of them touching on the dark realities of her lifestyle that became too much to bear for the almost 30-year-old woman. Because despite her boisterous persona, not everything was as great as she made it out to be. In 2020, when the pandemic hit, it shut down the adult industry. It was at this time when Riley was not sleeping with anyone and had an existential crisis.
When I was like, can we like go get coffee and like let's go like get breakfast, and he's like, I don't want to be seen in public with you, and that just hurt so bad, and it sucked.
The carefree facade began to have cracks as longtime fans realized that Riley wasn't as happy as she made it out to be. Being in the industry resulted in damaging her relationship with her family in a variety of ways. Her aunts and cousins were disgusted by her life choices, and she was excluded from weddings and get-togethers. Her father's new wife refused to allow Riley into their house, or to see her younger brother. The two were kept separated for several years, which destroyed her relationship with him. While family members scorned her, others embraced her career. Too much. Besides her sister, following in her footsteps and becoming a stripper, her younger siblings would FaceTime her at sleepover parties just to prove to their friends that their sister was Riley Reed. One relative went so far as to ask Riley to promote his toilet seat company. The worst offender of them all, though, was her mother.
I started webcamming, and I wanted to know if I could tell my viewers that you're my daughter, so that I can make more money.
You know what's coming after that, right? She's gonna ask you to be on the cam.
Retweet. She's gonna ask you to
be on the cam.
I'm just like, it's different when your parent is like sexualizing you, and like, it just makes me feel like I'm like, oh, if you could prostitute me, you would.
Her mom wanting to profit off her daughter's name deeply hurt the young woman who felt like she was being taken advantage of. Riley had worked incredibly hard for her notoriety and had committed disturbing acts in order to earn her success. She refused to allow her mother to use her name and decided it would be best to cut herself off from her entire family. She went through a very depressive episode at this point, realizing her way of coping was not healthy.
I was kind of like depressed a lot. I was just like sad all the time and everything like that. So, and I also realized like I was kind of an alcoholic where I would just drink like a bottle or 2 bottles of wine every night by myself.
Really, every night?
As much as Riley used to talk about how wonderful the adult industry is, as time has passed on, as she has become more willing to discuss the negatives. Early on in her career, a male adult star shoved her face into places she didn't consent to. In another instance, Riley walked off the set because one of the female performers was incredibly
jednostavno nemam pojma, majke. Sa svim mogućim zakovanim rezistima i svim mogućim sranjima. Znači, na kurac mi ide već ovo, baš mi na kurac ide.
Pressured into ways.
jebem ti reziste i govna i sve ti jebem.
Imaš neprijatelja koji skida rezist.
Additionally, Riley has, in the past, talked about doing a scene where she was electrocuted and burned so badly it left marks. On top of this, she has also contracted STDs from other performers. Each man she dated begged the adult
Godinama se muči jebeno i ne mogu. Znači, ne mogu jebeno i mož ga jeb. Jebem ti milu mater. Ma ne, pomoći meni ne.
Riley began to struggle to satisfy herself during intimacy and felt depressed on set with the random men she was sleeping with.
Ništa mi niko ne može pomoći. Samo ako sam sebi ne mogu pomoći, onda mi niko pomoći.
When COVID happened, it helped me like have a little bit of self-respect.
A ne može, brate, kad ne radi kako treba, možda jeb.
Despite all of this, Riley often continues to promote how glamorous the lifestyle is to this very day. I've noticed that she has continued to flip-flop back and forth from glorifying the industry to slamming it for its practices and
ne kapiram takve stvari. Zašto? Zašto jebeno mora tako to ne mogu da skapiram.
The OnlyFans girls should go into porn.
On one hand,
nemaš 4-5 hiljada je malo damage. Hilta. Mora da imam barem 10 hiljada šilta i gotovo.
Those negative effects managed to not hit Riley until 2020 when she made the bold move to quit filming with men entirely. This was a huge blow to her income, but she felt it was necessary in order to have a stable relationship. From there, Riley began searching for her perfect man. Eventually, the adult star came across a profile on social media that interested her. His name was Pasha Petkins, who is a parkour athlete from Latvia, located in Eastern Europe. Riley thought he was attractive, but wasn't sure how to approach. In the past, she had been turned down after DMing men on social media with her intense tactics. Streamer William Bonner, aka Jericho, talked about his awkward experience with Riley.
And on my birthday, she sent me her STD test that was taken from 2 days earlier, and she was like, "Hey, can I come over for your birthday?" And I was like, I've been no, I'm pretty you're joking probably, but also no. And I said no, and she got kind of upset. She was like, "Why do you keep saying no? What is your problem?"
The single woman likely learned her lesson from this encounter and decided to come across less aggressive. After sliding into Pasha's DMs under the pretense of a mutual interest in literature, she inquired if he wanted to collab in 2021. It took a total of 3 months to meet up as the athlete wasn't sure about working with the adult star and kept ghosting her. Even though her therapist told her it was time to move on, Riley was persistent and managed to get Pasha to meet under the pretense of a non-sexual collaboration. While working together, Riley felt a spark with the parkour athlete, and they began seeing each other often. At first, Pasha was concerned about dating Riley seriously, but people in his life, such as his friends and even mother, supported the relationship.
Just put it aside. Amazing, even with that, just a part of that.
Miss Reed has admitted in the past that she understands why men might be hesitant to date, but since she at least is aware of this, she tries to offer potential perks.
Yeah, she definitely. I was always she took me to a parkour gym. When we first started hooking up and stuff, I was like, oh my god, this is something. This is next level.
Pasha and Riley regularly hook up with other adult actresses, posting the content on OnlyFans. This doesn't mean Pasha lets Riley do whatever she wants, though. He has put his foot down when it comes to some of her sexual fantasies.
To me, it's not what a word I would use to describe it. I don't think it's hot or anything. I just think it's funny, and so I want him to pee on me. So I'm like, ha.
These activities led to Riley becoming pregnant after only 3 months together. The woman now had a choice to make if she wanted to keep the pregnancy or not. In the past, the adult star had gone pregnant on a few occasions since she refused to go on birth control throughout the entirety of her X-rated career. On top of this, she has said for nearly a decade that she didn't want to have kids.
I think that I'm being the best mother possible by not having children, because I think that the life that they could live could be full of suffering, whereas they will be shamed their entire life possibly, whereas that same statement where how do you know that's your real dad? I've seen your mom take on many partners, and
Despite her firm viewpoint, she felt a connection with his pregnancy and decided to keep it, shrugging off how her career is going to impact her children.
People can't say this statement to you guys, but it's like, I worry like someone's gonna be like, how do you know that was your real dad? I've seen your mom getting
Get that a lot too,
like
yeah.
that.
After making this life-altering decision, she demanded that Pasha marry her. She agreed after she proposed to him, and the couple began to plan for both their child and upcoming wedding. While Pasha was away for work, Riley attended a routine doctor's visit for the baby. It was there the news was broken to the expecting mom that she had a miscarriage. The couple was devastated by the loss, but still decided to get married in the summer of 2021. Those lucky enough to attend the ceremony were impressed by the event. The couple opted to have adult stars at the wedding rather than some of Riley's unsupportive family members. And just 3 months after tying the knot, Riley became pregnant again despite the previous fertility hang-up. The soon-to-be mom decided to keep her pregnancy a secret, fearing a second miscarriage. All went well and the couple welcomed the baby girl, Emma, in June of 2022. Instantly, the new mom felt very protective of her child and didn't want to post pictures of her daughter's face to protect her identity. However, this didn't last long as her child was featured on the YouTube channel Cool Kicks. Her daughter has become a huge part of the married woman's life, resulting in a very strict schooling schedule. At only 6 months old, Riley claimed to be giving Emma homework and interviewed hundreds of nannies looking for the perfect fit for her child. Around this time, she reconnected with her mother for the sake of her daughter, although admits that her personal relationship will never be the same. Despite having a supportive family, husband, and nanny, Riley struggled getting back into the adult industry after having a child. Only 6 months later, she pushed herself to return, but it had unfortunate consequences.
There was a week that I was struggling, and so I was like, we're doing bottles because like I was like feeling like I wasn't feeding my baby for like a week.
On top of this, Riley underwent a C-section, leaving behind a scar which caused a mental hang-up when posting adult content.
It only bothers me because it timestamps my porn that I've shot after having my daughter.
However, some of her fans thought that the C-section was a better way to give birth than the traditional.
Simple things like trying to like push things like with your legs like this, and I'm like, oh no, I can't do that.
Got it. The physicality.
Yeah, my core is like demolished at this point.
Regardless, Riley did not allow this to slow her down and continues to film content with women and her husband. Riley is still not certain how she is going to explain her lifestyle to her child, attempting for now to separate her adult acting and mom life. She won't even look at her social media platforms when her daughter is around. When asked if Emma would be drawn to the industry, the mom shrugged it off. While Riley no longer works for mainstream companies, she still does play an active role in the industry by guiding the younger generation. The best example of this can be seen in her stepsister, Ryan Reed. Although the two women are not related in any way, the idea that new women can take on the moniker is a business play to allow her brand to outlive her. Riley even made a rare return to the mainstream adult sites to support her stepsister, although did not perform. It seems that Riley's influence did help the rising adult star, as she has booked several roles and even signed with top agent Mark Speaker, who Riley is still working with today. On top of shouting out adult stars on Twitter, Riley decided to create her own agency in 2021 called ASH, standing for All Star Hustle. This company is supposed to help women manage their OnlyFans accounts, but I found the website itself to be lacking in describing what these services exactly are. The company was written about in the New York Times, calling the agency the e-pimps of OnlyFans. Although still actively engaging in adult content, Riley has pushed more recently to be referred to as Ashley in her personal life. Pasha refuses to call her by the stage name, and Adam 22 got into trouble
sve
when he
ostavljam
signed her baby shower card to
samo
Riley and not Ashley.
egzalti
Additionally,
to
over
me
the years,
interesuje,
Riley has
jebo,
pushed
sve
to get herself
ostalo meni
involved in even more businesses. She has a clothing line called 18 Plus with her husband and has been working towards producing her own cartoon about adult stars.
Ćeš pogibjeti ako pokušavaš sve da doći.
Clona AI, where she is a co-founder. Users can engage in virtual sex with Riley's AI bot. Behind this is to again
Džabe da ga isprazni kad ću ga opet napuniti s nekim
Lako se
šta će?
napuni.
And that is where we're at today. a woman that was able to make it out of a bad childhood with the most unusual of career paths. What I find most interesting about Ashley is that she treated her adult name the same way a WWE wrestler treats their persona. She's played it so well that I don't think most people realize there is a clear difference between how she comes off on camera and how she is behind the scenes. Despite what your preconceived notions are of adult performers, there's no denying that she was given a bad handing. Because of this, Riley ran with the one thing she knew would make her money, and in the process became one of the most famous names on the World Wide Web.
Welcome to the Heavy Spoiler Show. I'm your host Paul, and this video we're breaking down Nosferatu.
I'll take this off. Got loads of hair stuck in my mouth there.
Now the movie itself is of course a remake of the 1922 silent film. Titled Nosferatu, a Symphony of Horror, that was the first vampire movie ever. Though it's gone on to be considered a masterpiece, at the time it was met with some backlash. The film was an unauthorized adaptation of Dracula and it led to a big lawsuit. Bram Stoker's widow Florence Balcombe sued for copyright violation and in the end she won the case. Thus, all copies were ordered to be destroyed. It's easy to apply this metaphor to the death of the titular character and they were burned up just like the Count. However, some copies survived and thus the legend of the film lived on. Like a vampire, it went beyond death and the figures now became a cinematic icon. However, because of this, the end credits list that it's based on Nosferatu and also the work Dracula as well. Classed as being one of the first horrors ever though, we now have this remake produced by Robert Eggers. Eggers has created a body of work that marries historical realism with fantastical elements. Things like The Witch, it deals with the occult while also remaining accurate to the time. Whether it's the sets, dialect, accents or costumes, it's clear he puts a lot of care into his work. And this movie's no exception, with it featuring some of the best night scenes in modern cinema. Like, thank God we're not just doing the literal dark days of the Game of Thrones night battle. How this was done though is given away by little clues that are retained in the film. For example, you can see clouds in the sky at the start and also Ellen's shadow on the ground. In our Dr. No video, we discussed how this often shows stuff's being shot in the day and then simply darkened for film. But I think it works really well, and at points the movie even seems black and white. This gives it the effect of the original silent film, and it creates such a cool aesthetic with the dark. There's lots of things that we need to bring into the light though, and throughout this video, we're gonna break it all down. Please hit the thumbs up if you enjoy the video, and if you're down for the count like a bad boxer, then make sure you subscribe. With that out of the way, thank you for clicking this. Now let's get into Nosferatu. Now the movie itself was in development for over 9 years, with it first being announced in 2015. This was just months after Eggers' debut The Witch, and he'd of course then go on to do The Northman. Both featured Anya Taylor-Joy, and she was originally cast as Ellen. Later, Harry Styles was also cast as her husband, but I'm glad they changed that one direction. Nicholas Hoult perhaps delivers his best performance to date, and after Don't Worry Darling, it's difficult to imagine Styles doing better. Now due to the original being based on Dracula, pretty much all the story's the same. We follow a young solicitor heading to a remote castle to help a creepy old dude buy a property abroad. The vampiric figure wants to steal his wife, and the hero returns to try and take out the villain.
Oh, you're my wife now.
We have the female character's friend being killed by the vampire, and yada yada yada. The beats are laid out like the original. However, a few things were changed in the remake that are brought over to this. For example, Nosferatu introduced the idea that vampires would perish in sunlight. Bram Stoker just had his ability suspended, and the sunlight merely weakened him. The daylight thing's now a staple of the genre though, and it highlights how important Nosferatu is. You could even argue it's what made the creature as popular as they are, and clearly several directors have been influenced by the film. Multiple Dracula projects have come out recently, so such as The Voyage of the Demeter. That's literally a whole movie about the boat scene mixed in with Alien. Renfield also released recently, and that of course starred Nicholas Hoult. It ends up the Dracula/Orlok servant relationship, so it actually nicely plays into the characters here. Doug Jones also made a version of Nosferatu last year as well, and yet the characters had such a long legacy. On top of that, Nosferatu also notably featured in SpongeBob SquarePants during the episode Graveyard Shift. In an interview, Eggers said that he knew of this, and that kid shows like the Muppet Babies exposed him to a lot of horror references. We of course also get a change in the names, with Count Dracula being changed to Count Orlok. Both were based on Vlad the Impaler though, which we will talk more about with the character's design. Now the movie opens up with a classic Universal Films logo which was used for their movies in 1913. That was when they were known as the Universal Film Manufacturing Company, so it's a great way to open up the movie. We then go to the Focus Features logo, which has been made to look all old-timey like, despite the company being founded in 2002. This then goes to Maiden Voyage, which ironically fits in with the boat trip Orlok takes. Opening with Ellen pleading for someone to ease her loneliness, it then leaves her open to Orlok's control. The original book dealt with themes of melancholy and how lonely eternity could be. In a lot of adaptations, Dracula is seen as a tortured soul who lives forever alone in his castle. Things like the Castlevania anime, they've all dealt with these themes, and this is what drives the Count to buy a house. You also forget just how much people were cut off from others back in the day. Nowadays, you can speak to almost anyone on the planet in an instant. However, back then if somebody went on a trip, it was common that you wouldn't see them for years. Thus, loneliness starts a chain of events that has Orlok use her future husband to help him move to Germany. This is a big changer from the other adaptations, and it sets up that Ellen was in contact with him long before she was romantically interested in anybody else. In the book, Ellen's character Lucy only develops a psychic connection after Dracula drinks her blood 3 times. In the 1922's Nosferatu, she only becomes connected halfway through the movie, so they are altering things slightly. From Orlok's point of view though, she swore herself to him, and she's then cheating on him with Thomas. In the past, it's normally the husband who invites the devil in, as he's the one tempted by money. There the story's been a metaphor for greed, but here I see this as a metaphor for lust. The movie is horny as F, and I think Eggers is giving a comment on society. Later on, Nosferatu describes himself as being an appetite, and I think both he and Ellen have one that's sexual. Even the way Orlok drinks blood, there's clearly humping and thrusting, so it ties in with that really well. However, due to society, she can't act how she wants, and she's left at home and basically told her place. She doesn't get to make the decisions, and her pleas for her husband to stay home are ignored. So sexual repression and the release of that definitely feels like an aspect of the movie. The psychic connection is played up a lot more in this compared to the original though, and Eggers expands Ellen's role massively. Professor Albin Eberhard von Franz later explains that Ellen has a connection to the paranormal, which means she's being used by Orlok. He even tells her that in another life she would have been a priestess of Isis. Eggers mentioned in an interview how in the Herzog movie she was mentioned as a sleepwalker, and back then sleepwalkers were presumed to be in tune with the other side. Von Franz is also played by Willem Dafoe. His inclusion sees him teaming up with Eggers once more after The Northman and also The Lighthouse, which is another great film. Ralph Ineson, who appears as Franz's former student, is also a frequent collaborator, having appeared in The Witch, The Northman, and now Nosferatu. This, however, is Dafoe's second Nosferatu-themed movie, as he played Count Orlok during 2000's Shadow of the Vampire. That was a send-up of the making of the original Nosferatu, so it is kind of like how Holt played Renfield. Albin was also the name of the producer on the original, and his character is based on Professor Van Helsing. He's basically your vampire hunting archetype, and over the years he's been adapted in several ways. Cutting back to the movie though, we get our first look at the night shots, which again are presented really well. This was part of a technique Eggers used on The Northman, but he really steps it up here. Director of photography Jaron Blaschke used what he called a short pass filter to remove the color in the film. He put on the same one used for The Lighthouse, which is black and white, but he allowed a little bit of blue into the spectrum. They then removed the red and yellow, which makes the movie have a look akin to the original film. We then see Ellen taken over by Orlok, and Lily actually work with a movement coach to get these moments to be as creepy as they are, and some of them are insane. Lily explained how each of the movements in the movies intended to fit the interior trauma and thoughts going through Ellen's head. Eggers was inspired by Japanese Buto movements, which is a style of dancing that started in the 50s. If you recognize it, it's because they were used in the ring, and it works really well here. They also took inspiration from Jean-Martin Charcot's Hysteria images, which fit in with the time period of the movie. Doing this exhausted the actress though, and thus they weren't able to do that many takes. With her taking over, we then cut to the title card. The font was designed by Teddy Blanks, who also did the recent throwback one they used for Wicked. He also worked on The Lighthouse as well, and has credits for Severance, Barbie, and Beau's Afraid. These all ooze style just the same as Nosferatu, and it looks like the guy nails the logos every time. Considering the silent movie origin and the use of text there, the commitment to getting the right gothic logo, you know, I really appreciate it. We then see Ellen and her newlywed husband interrupted by a cat while she begs him to stroke another pussy. You know what? Ellen's cat has no master or mistress, which mirrors Ellen, who has both a husband and a psychic long-distance boyfriend. Her having this pet fits well with the movie's second half, where the rats take over the city and cause a plague. Back then, cats were used to hunt rats, and she's the one who kills Orlok in the end. The professor also has multiple cats, subtly hinting how he'll be the one to help Ellen. Thomas then rushes off as he's expecting a big day at work, and he needs the money to start a family and home. Now, I do appreciate how they made the pair newlyweds, whereas in the past they've been married a couple of years. It sort of plays into the eagerness he has and why he wants to do what's best for his family. We also learn he's in debt to his school friend, and though his mate's alright about it, he clearly wants to show he can pay him back. We then get a hint of Ellen's foresight as she knows her husband's got the position already and he's going to be sent away. This sort of feels like it riffs off The Shining, where Danny knew his dad had got the job. It explains why moments ago she begged him to stay and hoped he'd throw a sickie, and this might be why he was late in the end. Happy 2025 everyone, I hope your new year's been great and that everyone's looking forward to the future. However, we are of course in a big political change across the world, and going forward, the landscape of media and reporting is rapidly evolving. Staying up to date with things where you don't know what the truth is can be difficult, but that's where our sponsors Straight Arrow News comes in. They report right down the middle with facts and don't push any bias or spin to help fuel a narrative. The site has a wide range of topics from politics to tech, but they're not trying to make you think a certain way. They also have the Media Mist tool, which lets you look at stories that are often underreported or not reported at all. On top of this, the site has an opinion section which possesses both left and right voices, so you can see things by opposite sides and then make your mind up. Straight Arrow News are so good at delivering the news, they've been awarded by independent experts at all sides and Adfontes Media, who regularly assess the reliability of news outlets. They verified Straight Arrow News as being unbiased and have awarded them with a center rating and balance certification. We're in the aftermath of 2 big elections, and there's lots of reports coming out constantly. Stay on top of it without the bias or spin by going to Straight Arrow News. Go to san.com/spoilers to check it out. You can subscribe through my link. We're calling it Sanuary. You can also scan the QR code on screen right now to get the app. When you subscribe, you not only support me, you're also supporting a group of journalists that are raising the bar on news and focused on serving you the truth. Huge thank you again to Straight Arrow News for sponsoring the video. Now let's get into the rest of the breakdown. Thomas then walks to his workplace, and we learn they live in Germany during 1838. This was the era the original was set in, so it's a nice little detail to include. I did crack up a bit at the name of the company because it's called Knock and See, which sounds like Knock and See.
Nijem pričao damage, ti ga nisi dobro razumio.
The Codfather. There's a hairdresser's around the corner called Curl Up and Dye, because you dye your hair. It's good. It's a good. We then see a group of men at desks, angry at his tardiness, which really reminded me of Scrooge's office in the Muppets Christmas Carol. It might have been because I watched it a few days ago, but to be fair, it was for Christmas. Not a psychopath. We then meet Herr Nog, who is under the spell of Orlok and has been duped into thinking he'll get power from the Count. Nog is based on the character of Renfield, and he follows largely the same beats. He ate rats and insects, believing he would gain power, As here we see him brutally bite a pigeon's head off. Little segue, yeah, but during that scene, Innocent also gives one of his best deadpan lines ever.
Dobro, ali kritika kad dižeš raste ti damage.
Nock has slowly started to lose his mind though, and he does seem rather eccentric. He's giddy at the idea that this situation's providence, which means the protective care of God or of nature is a spiritual power. He's clearly loving the plans coming together and starts to drop subtle hints like this.
To retire, yeah, he has one foot in the grave, so to speak.
One thing I love about the film as well is how that it also tackles emerging ideas at the time. The film really wrestles with the old and new world, and we see this in several subtle ways. The new world is described as structured and formal, and everything's thought to be rational. On the flip side of this, the old world said to be eternal and infinite. The Now Playing podcast pointed out that in every scene set in Germany, you're able to spot a clock in the background. On the flip side of this, all the scenes outside of this don't feature one. So things tied to this side of the infinite are often formless and without time. A detail I love is that Thomas' co-worker says he's 15 minutes late, but his boss doesn't care at all. This is a little clue to Nock not being interested in time, because at this moment, he's tied up with the infinite. He tells Thomas he intends to buy a house in Wisborg, which is the same name used in the 1922 movie. Just like in the film, he's sent to a castle in the Carpathian Mountains, which is where Transylvania is located. Next to the map, we can also see wax seals of heptagrams, which are a symbol of Orlok. There's lots of strange symbols there, mate, but Nock quickly covers them up. Throughout the film, we also have the frequent use of Dacian language. I'm unsure if it's pronounced Dacian or Dacian, but from what I found, everyone said Dacian, so yeah, we're going with that for the video. Comments below if you're a Dacian expert. If you are though, yeah, your job's useless, because the language is extinct, and it dates back thousands of years. This scene all calls back to the original movie though, when Nock looks at similar writings, and that kind of hinted that something was up about the character. We then see as the weather ominously changes as Hutter returns home, and he finds Ellen distraught at this in the flowers. She says they'll die in a couple of days, foreshadowing the danger Thomas is in. This is a callback to the original movie where Ellen said a similar line about the flowers. Flowers are lilac though, and they have a much deeper meaning. Lilacs are native to Eastern Europe, which no doubt reminded Ellen of her long-distance boyfriend. The colour was also worn by widows at the time, which further sent home the metaphor of death. Lilacs are thought to symbolise first love, which I believe is also an allusion to Orlok. This is due to Ellen saying that in her dream, the smell of lilacs was in the air. Orlok even smells the
Zato što ti to otičava ascendancy. Možeš da ascendancy odradiš svaki put, bez da ono pokušavaš 3-4 puta.
The smell of death is the plague that comes to the city, and we see how all around Ellen slowly start to die. The wedding could also allude to Orlok attempting to take control of her and their sex scene at the end. So having the smell of lilacs gives us an early insight into her foresight. Now Thomas thinks she's a bit crazy, and it's hinted she's had this supposed madness for quite a while. It was initially believed to have passed, but people become forceful with her when it re-emerges. She ends up being bound to the bed, and Now Playing said they treat her like a problem instead of a person, which is a great phrase to use. He very confidently says that everything's well and thinks that having a big house with maids will solve it. It highlights he doesn't understand her issues and therefore doesn't know how to treat it. I also love the quick cut of them looking sad and miserable in the carriage. Thomas clearly wants to emulate his boyhood friend though, who's made a fortune off his father's shipyard. He even mentions how the demands outstripping his capacity and his biggest problems that he's making too much money. This is due to being set near the end of the Industrial Revolution, which brought untold riches to Europe. You also hear he's got a son on the way, and he's more interested in him than he is his two girls. He cares more about the kid he doesn't have yet, and ignores their cries about the monster under the bed. Now the film also argues the point of the rational versus the irrational. If you believe in science, then you can't believe in monsters, and thus they fall victim to it because the warnings fall on deaf ears. On the flip side of this, the Romani haven't modernized like Germany, and they still go out in the night and hunt vampires. They keep Orlok in his castle and believe he's trapped, so the rest of the world's safe. Even though the rest of the world's moving on though, they're still stuck in their ways to protect everyone else. Ellen then cuts her hair, which could be for Thomas to put in a locket, but it can also be read as being a gift to Orlok. This will let him know to follow him, and you can really read into this moment another way. We then see as Thomas has come across a village of Romani people dancing and playing music. We learn that these people live in fear of Orlok and basically Voldemort his name, which I shouldn't have said. I apologize.
You should have said that. I should not have said that.
As he walks in, feels like the pub scene in American Werewolf in London, where the two characters are met with stonewall silence, as the locals also live in the fear of a monster on the prowl. An older lady is also using garlic as protection against Orlok, with this of course being a staple of weapons against vampires. This was created by Stoker in his book, where Van Helsing used it to ward off the creatures of the night. However, it does originate in Slavic myths. There it's said that garlic can ward off all manner of folklore beasts. Now in this version, the people are given way more of a personality as opposed to how they were portrayed in the original and also in the book. In a lot of versions, these villagers actually work for Dracula and do his bidding and basically move about his coffin. Here though, they act against him and it adds a nice little dynamic. Now when making the movie, Eggers said he actually watched Dracula Dead and loving it. It's a weird choice, but that wasn't to see what to do, but rather what not to do. In case you haven't seen it, the movie's a parody and it basically rips apart all that's come before. Because of this, he was able to note the cliches and then make sure to avoid them in his script. One of the big points of contention was that the villagers tell him not to go to the castle, and yet he still goes ahead.
We're gonna do it anyway.
So here they had it so he doesn't understand the language and thus can't listen to their warnings, which is a nice little touch. Now vampires are mentioned in Romani folklore as beings that rise from the grave and drink blood. This is why we get that interesting scene of the woman riding on a horse. In the folklore it was said that a 7-year-old boy dressed in white will find a vampire's grave if they ride through the cemetery at midday. Here we have a naked version on a white horse, which fits the film thematically. She's being used here as bait, which is something Ellen does at the end. The change to a woman here also fits in with the themes of Orlok taking women throughout the ages, which we find out later on in the book. Death also rides a white horse, so yeah, it is a nice bit of symbolism. Now it's up in the air if it's a dream or not, but I do think it was real. We see Thomas's boots are muddy, and due to what we learn of the area, you know, vampires roam around there. So I can't see Thomas dreaming this up before meeting Orlok. This also teaches him to stake them through the heart, which he does later on when he knocks on the wrong coffin. Poor Thomas is then left alone as he has to walk all the way to the castle in the snow. The snow is very interesting though, and Eggers actually used an old school film technique. The snow made on the Northmen was created by a device that would be set on fire, swung around, and then sprinkle ash in the air. However, since then, the gas it emits was made illegal, so he had to do it differently. This led to Eggers using an old technique which involved frozen potato flakes. The production ended up buying a massive supply in Europe, and yeah, you can't tell the difference. No idea that was like a potato. However, just like the original, a carriage mysteriously comes to meet him. It's incredibly eerie and looks to be riderless, which again adds to this spooky dream feeling. In the original, this was always driven by the vampire, but I like here that it doesn't have a rider. Adding into the dreamlike quality, Thomas then floats into the carriage. The carriage then gets chased by hounds, and we see as he arrives at the castle. This is Corbin Castle, which is one of the largest castles in Europe. The shot also looks very similar to when Keanu Reeves as Jonathan Harker arrived there in 92's Bram Stoker's Dracula. Whoa, I will arrive at the castle. That's how he sounded. It was Cockney back then, that was. Interestingly, this castle is also where Vlad the Impaler was imprisoned for a short time. The Impaler was known for, well, impaling, and I don't know if that's a sexual metaphor, but yeah, the guy killed a lot of people. It's estimated that at the time he may have killed up to 100,000, which is insane looking back, as killings had to be done by hand. Genocides these days, you know, they're often carried out by industrial means, but there everything had to be done with personal involvement. Vlad was hated, and he was so feared that even in death, people thought he might come back. This is what created the legend of the vampire, and it formed the basis of Dracula. Now Eggers actually gives a nod to this in the character design of Orlok. He's a big departure from the classic silent film, and instead he looks like a noble lord. This includes having a gigantic mustache, which is what Vlad also had in real life. Anyway, back to the castle, and the interior was filmed at Pernstein Castle. This was also used in the 1979 Werner Herzog version of Nosferatu, and it has such a creepy aesthetic. I love how as he opens his eyes, it looks like he's waking up in a coffin, and he then appears at the gates. These gates were actually made especially for the production, as Eggers wanted huge, intimidating barriers. He also looks like he just smashed the red button on the voice. They open without him even making contact, and it's such a creepy detail. It's here that we also see the silhouette of Orlok, with Bill Skarsgård being completely completely unrecognizable. Eggers intended for Orlok to be a vampire from a time when people actually believed in them. They were thought to be like putrid rotting corpses and I guess not have shiny skin. Orlok's eyes are also cataracts, so it creates the impression he's a corpse. He also does a heavy accent, which is clearly inspired by Bela Lugosi. Lugosi had difficulty landing roles at the time, and this was due to his thick Hungarian accent. However, upon playing Dracula, it worked really well to add this foreign and other feel. Since then, it's just become a part of the character, and it's difficult to imagine him speaking any other way. Orlok then chastises Thomas for being late, just like he does in the original. Eggers expands on the scene brilliantly though. Orlok is mostly hidden away, and Holt does a great job of looking like he's way in over his head. Just before they head into the castle, we see Orlok walk ahead, and he makes no sound, which Eggers said was an homage to the silent movie nature of the original. Thomas looks like he's on a haunted house ride at times, and Orlok exits the scene left and then comes in from the right. It's so good, and I just love the way they frame him here. Finally, we get our first proper good look at him, and it plays upon the description in the book. The mouth, so far as I could see it under the heavy mustache, was fixed and rather cruel looking, with peculiarly sharp white teeth. These protruded over the lips, whose remarkable ruddiness showed astonishing vitality in a man of his years. The rest, his ears were pale, and at the tops extremely pointed. The chin was broad and strong, and the cheeks firm though thin. The general effect was one of extraordinary pallor. Now Orlok's implied to have been a Solomonar who was cursed, and he's only allowed to live in this cursed land. Now Bill Skarsgård was originally cast as Thomas Hutter, however, the film had such a long pre-production. During this, Eggers rethought some of the movie and decided that Skarsgård would act better as the Count. Skarsgård completely disappears though, and I'm glad he got the role. He worked for a long time on his voice and likened it to Mongolian throat singing. His face was made using prosthetics, with over 60 being applied to him. His
Aj probavi naći taj skepter da ima increased
cast no stranger to this process though, as he notably played Pennywise during It Chapter 1 and 2. One of the prosthetics was also actually gifted to Nicholas Hoult, made for a lovely little memento. During the scene when Orlok slips Thomas's blood, Eggers asked, "How was that for you?" Holt said he could feel the prosthetic penis, so Eggers framed it and sent it as a gift. Yay! Thomas then starts to eat the bread like the original, and he also cuts his fingers the same way. In both, the vampire fixates on the blood and the hunger builds within. Thomas then randomly appears at the fire, and we can see the statue looks like it's moving. Again, we're unsure if he's dreaming or not, and he looks utterly terrified. We then cut to a beach that looks like the original, and it was inspired by the book. There, Mina's journals talked about a holiday in Whitby, which I've visited numerous times. Honestly, when you go there, I don't know what it is, but there's just an atmosphere to it. The cathedral looms larger over the hill, and it's easy to see why it was picked for Dracula. Now the crosses here are intended to be the graves of sailors who were lost at sea. This was filmed on a lake in the Czech Republic, and it even flooded on the day of filming. Ellen then talks about a higher power having a hold of her, which Anna chalks up to being God. While the men ignore Ellen through science, Anna does it through religion. She says, "Just be a good Christian, yeah, and celebrate Christmas, and in the end, no harm can come to you." So it further adds into the aspects of repression and how both religion and society can oppress women sexually. Film analysis hat going on there. The movie was of course also released on Christmas Day, and they repeatedly mention it throughout the film. So it's a Christmas movie. Christmas is of course about celebrating the birth of a man who died for our sins, and that sacrifice takes on a religious significance, which could be seen as being mirrored in Ellen. She sacrifices herself in the end, and dies on Christmas to save us from the darkness. We then cut to Thomas waking up after having a wild night of sucking. He wanders the halls to find the place totally abandoned, and it's just like he did when he woke up at the village. Now in the book, Dracula had 3 female servants, and they definitely left an impression on me when I was young. Monica Bellucci, suck me all night. Dear me. However, I feel this portrayal of Nosferatu also makes it a much more faithful adaptation, as it really nails the gothic horror. Like sexy vampires, I love them, but I don't know if it would have distracted too much. Thomas then notices that he has fang marks, just like the original. Nosferatu feeds on the chest, as this offers a direct line to the heart. At the end, when he's leaning over Ellen, we can also see a mark on his chest as well. So that's likely where he was fed upon, and it might be how he was inflicted with the vampiric curse. Next, Orlok looks over the contract and presents it to Thomas to sign it. It's all a trick by Orlok so he can take Ellen, and it's written in Dacian language, again to further conceal his intended plans. I like how hesitant he is to sign this, and he's clearly sweating. He's doing the old click agree without reading the terms and conditions, but he's just so desperate to give Ellen the life she deserves. He's given gold, but Ellen later lambasts him for this, as she basically says, "You sold me for some pieces of gold." Could time with those biblical references as well, as Judas of course sold out Jesus. There it was for silver, but you know, it could time with that at least to some extent. And we're reaching a lot in this video. A huge shout out to Ryan at Screen Crush, who brought up how society deems people should all act a certain way. Thomas wants to grab the money, but he doesn't because he knows it's not polite. Ellen wants to be sexually open, but she can't because she knows it isn't proper. Nock just wants to eat pigeons, and everyone's held back from their desires. However, they all give in to them, which in the end leads to their undoing. Orlok knows he should stop feasting on Ellen at the end, but he draws himself back in and stays for one more drink. Thus the son's able to kill him, and thus because he can't control his desires, he ends up losing out. So it's a great thematic thing that constantly continues throughout the movie. Now Orlok won't mention why he chose a dilapidated house, and he just says the covenant is signed. Covenant means property contract, and yeah, it just kind of ties into the legal sense. In the original, Orlok then creepily stared at the locket and said, "Your wife has such a lovely neck." Here though, he talks about the lilacs. Thomas is also a buff when asking about the letters he wants to send to Ellen, which in the original he actually managed to do. Poor Thomas, he's then stuck in Luigi's mansion, which is a nightmare scenario. He's pretty much become Orlok's blood bank, and Thomas ends up discovering his coffin. I love the design of it, it just looks gothically medieval, and it also has his heft he was buried. Reaching out to Ellen, he then boasts her husband's gone, and we see as he goes to feed on him. He levitates as he does this, and yeah, such a great moment. Reminded me of the getting high scene in Breaking Bad, I think it was, and yeah, the guy's just kind of completely out of it. The use of silhouette and shadows also incredible, and yeah, the discovering his coffin. I love the design of it, it just looks gothically medieval, and it also has his heptagram symbol on it. The coffin throughout all the incarnations is deeply tied to the character, and he has to sleep in the dirt from where he was buried. Reaching out to Ellen, he then boasts her husband's gone, and we see as he goes to feed on him. He levitates as he does this, and yeah, such a great moment. Reminded me of the getting high scene in Breaking Bad, I think it was, and yeah, the guy's just kind of completely out of it. The use of silhouette and shadows also incredible, and it all calls back to the original. A lot of these shots are actually done using convex lenses and mirrors, and they create such a creepy effect. The hounds as well are terrifying. In reality, they're Czech shepherds, and yeah, pretty scary. Like, I hope my dog doesn't come after me like that. Nicholas Hoult also talked about how they scared him on set, as they'd be barking and be held back on leads, just ready to run after him. While this is going on, Ellen also sleepwalks and mimics the movements of Orlok. However, she falls, and symbolically this shows how she's fallen under his spell. I absolutely love the raw emotion from Lily Rose Depp, and throughout she really nails the movements. There's clear callbacks to The Exorcist, and later on she even does the crab. This is a reference to the spider walk that was removed from the original cut, but it's a great inclusion, and you definitely feel that idea of possession. Moaning in her sleep, the doctor suggests tying her down and even having her sleep in a corset. These will both bound her, and it further plays into the themes of repression. Ellen is immensely misunderstood by modern society, and even in this drama, she has to conform to things that will correct her. Corsets help to correct your posture, but this is done as a form of control. The corset has since become a symbol or shorthand of the boxing of women into the way that the patriarchy wants them to be. They could also be very dangerous if they were laced too tight, and I definitely feel that's what Eggers is saying. They also have them say, yeah, if this doesn't work, just use ether. And yet, not really helping her. Now this is mirrored in Nock and those at the asylum who are locked up in prison cells instead of being treated. Nock also says, "He is coming," which is something Ellen says throughout. It's not until Von Franz arrives that Ellen's really treated with any sense of decency and somewhat respect. At said hospital, Nock has gone fully insane, which is just like Renfield in the books. His cells are covered in Dacian, and he considers himself Orlok's servant. Just as he's reciting a gripping monologue, we also see Ellen descend into a fit, which Harding explains happens every night at the same time. We saw her have a similar one earlier on the beach, and it does look like epilepsy. This illness was stigmatized at the time, leading to some people being put in asylums. This further shows how Ellen's afflictions are thought of as weird rather than actually being diagnosed. The corset is tied down, and Harding starts to show his frustration at what he sees as a burden. Anyway, when he's downstairs, you might be wondering, hey, what's this pool table and why has they got no pockets? As we know, historical accuracy is very, very important to Eggers and also to his movies. This is actually a Caron billiards table, and instead of hitting the cue ball into a coloured ball to get it into the pocket, the aim is to hit your cue ball into another opponent's cue ball and then into the coloured balls. This scoring is known as a count, which is a very, very neat Easter egg referencing the count. To me, anyway, I'm seeing connections that there might not be. Now, I have seen some criticism of Aaron Taylor-Johnson's acting here. With it is a bit hammy, and I feel like he appears to be just like he's acting in a play. I think in general that Eggers movies feel a lot like stage plays, so maybe that's why he made the choices that he does. I guess you could say though he's been craving some real roles. His character is an interesting opposite to Ellen though, as he believes in the rationale of the time. This ends up blinding him, and just as he ignored his daughters, he ignores Ellen's advice. This leads to the death of his children and also the death of his wife. Now, it was definitely a time of misogyny, with hysteria being a common diagnosis. This just covered a number of things though, and was seen more as a catch-all term. Whether a woman had depression, anxiety, or didn't hit the thumbs up, they were all classed as hysterical. Later, the doctor even says he witnessed women make up all manner of delusions as he dismisses the threat of the occult. We then catch up with Thomas, who's landed on the bank of a river and he's taken to a church. He's healed by Orthodox nuns, and we get some more backstory on the count. Finally, someone can speak English or German, and they translate the words of the old nun. She explains how he was a dark figure, possibly a sorcerer, and that the devil helped him become an undead vampire. It kind of goes against the chess markings that were pointed out before, you know, being bitten and then turning. That's kind of how vampires are typically transformed, to me at least. However, this explains why he's so much more powerful than the vampire killed in the woods, as he's seen as a dark wizard. He's also able to summon storms and can astral project. Because of this likeness to a dark wizard, I actually saw a lot of similarities to Rasputin. Now, in the folklore tales, he would have been classed as a Solonari, which is someone who is able to control animals. This is what he does with the rats, and it's also said they could manipulate the weather. So it ties in with the sudden rain at the start, the storm here, and so on and so forth. It was also said that these wizards could ride dragons, but alas, we don't get to see that. However, Romanian folklore also has a creature named Zbragor. This is a roving spirit who makes love to maidens by night. So it seems like Eggers used a combination of different parts of the lore to make Orlok. I really appreciate that he's delved this deeply into it, and it adds a lot to the movie. Innocent's doctor then explains Professor Albin as we see a boat behind him which foreshadows the doom boat that's about to bring Orlok. Now the nuns tell Thomas that Orlok can't leave, but as we know, he's got that one trick vampire hunters hate. If he can transport his soil, he'll be able to travel, just take a plant pot. We then go to Professor von Franz, who as mentioned earlier has the first name Albin. Beyond being a producer on the original, Albin Grau also practiced the occult. Grau was friends with the legendary occultist Aleister Crowley, and Franz clearly mirrors his interests. Around the time, there was a massive rise in the interest in the occult, with seances regularly being held. Franz also represents the radical ways of thinking in society, and how the world around them is being seen in new ways. Even Charles Darwin's work brought the ire of religions, and humanity was starting to question their beliefs. I feel like Albin represents the old ways, and this could even be seen in one of the final shots. As he goes and looks out the window, a crucifix shadow appears on his face. This implies that God's looking down on him and potentially has been watching the figure. This then transitions to that God's eye view of the pair, and thus I feel like this was done on purpose. Obviously, if you interpret the crucifix another way, yeah, let me know below, as I'd love to get another point of view. Now, we see that he's surrounded by cats, and it's possible that one of these is the one that Ellen saw at the start. Later on, Albin acts affectionately towards it, and even gives it a treat from his pocket. So it may even potentially be one of his, and that's why I brought some food for it. Perhaps he's been watching her, and he may even be an instrument of God. We also learn the cat's called Greta, which is a nod to the original film. There, the character Ellen was played by Greta Schroeder, and thus they brought across her name here. When the men find him, he's muttering away to himself, and he says how he nearly unlocked the final key of the Mystorium Libre Quinique, which is the 5 books of mystery. This was a manuscript by occultist and mathematician John D. and Edward Kelly. This gave insight into the occult and taught the reader how to practice magic. The doctor then says, this means do not reveal what is sacred to dogs, and is in the Bible under Matthew 7:6. This is actually a saying from Jesus, and it basically means do not preach the word of God to those who are hostile. Von Franz definitely adds an element of belief into the movie, and later he says to fight what's in the darkness, we must first accept it. Albin then wakes up and replies with,
Neque mitatis margaritas vestia anti orgos.
This means nor cast your pearls before swine, and it's from the same part of the Bible. It means do not give valuable things to those who will not appreciate them, and could be about them not accepting what's going on. Albin then explains a dark presence brought him to the country years ago, which shows he's also in tune with the occult. It's possible that he may have also been like Ellen or Nock, but the demon didn't take him over. We then see the plague break out on the ship, which then gets taken to the mainland. Plagues are often seen as biblical, and it ties into the themes of the movie. While this is going on, Nock's strapped up into a chair, which he later breaks out of. Like Renfield in the book, he seems to have some very hefty strength. The boat is then seen, and it begins its doomed voyage. In the book, this was called the Demeter, and like it is in the movie, it's a Russian ship where each of the crew begin to perish. The recent movie just about the boat was clearly ripping off Alien, and the passengers were trapped on it with the monster. In the book, it was explained he needed food for his journey, and thus the crew provided a constant supply. We learn later that Orlok also sucked the sailors dry, and that each time he feeds, he gains more power. Could have worded that better, but this might even be why he needed Thomas as his first victim. The hunters may have stopped him from going out, and thus he needed someone to go to the castle. So much of this plan was put in motion like years in advance, and thus Thomas being called out could even have further motives. Now in the movie, instead of just being killed by a vampire, the crew are also taken over by the plague. It's essentially the bubonic plague that was thought to have arrived in Europe via rats on boats. You can definitely apply certain parts of the movie to the recent pandemic, but I like that they don't beat you over the head with it. Not even the bit where the guy basically does a Boris Johnson and breaks the quarantine rules he created. Franz then meets Ellen as she explains that she's always had the gift of foresight, and we learn her father found her after the prologue scene. This melancholy left her open to visitors, but in the end, this is when she met Thomas. He basically filled a hole in her life, and thus this subsided her depression. Beyond this though, they also say that people with more animalistic sides often fall prey to this. Sex is seen as a base desire, and it could be playing into the film's subtext. Now he explains how Ellen has far too much blood, and at this time in Europe and the US, leeches saw somewhat of a renaissance. Bloodletting was on the rise, and it was seen as a way to cure diseases. That night, we then watch as she goes full Reagan, and Albin also puts a needle through her wrist. This was something performed at seances to highlight a person was possessed. The professor attempting to heal her from this possession is also just like the Exorcist. Albin rattles off the names of angels and demons, and she also wears a white nightdress and jolts about in bed. Orlok also speaks through her, which is akin to what happened with Reagan. On top of the Exorcist, her white nightdress and long black hair are also reminiscent of Sadako from The Ring. Orlok also mentions there will be blood, which mirrors Nock later escaping, saying that blood is life. Franz then explains that the connection to Orlok has caused all these problems. Keep going like between Franz, but I'm just trying to keep it authentic, eggers, if you're watching. The guy also smokes the longest pipe I've ever seen, and it just adds a bit of humor to the darkness, especially as he's just standing there like in front of this big Christmas tree.
There is a dread storm rising.
The boat scene then really plays into the horror here, and we see his sailors attempt to kill Orlok. One thing that you might miss is that you can see his back amongst the raincoats just as the sailor approaches the box. Such a creepy detail, and he then pounces from behind. As the boat and Thomas arrive, we see that it's chucking it down, which ties into Orlok's powers. We then see his Nock escapes, and as the boat travels up the river to the mansion, it mirrors the shot from when Thomas went towards the castle. The mansion itself is falling apart and rotten, with its rundown appearance also mirroring Orlok. To me, keep having to say that because I might be reaching, and it's a lot of symbolism in this movie. Now Nock also offers himself to the Count.
Instruct me, charge me, use me.
With this though, all I could think about was Dr. Meredith Grey.
So pick me.
A šta tebi stoji na allocates?
Love me.
He wants to take out Thomas for Orlok, however,
Allocates onaj amulet.
she swore to him in the beginning, but then made new vows to Thomas. So she's torn between the two, and whether she'll give in to the dark or the light. I think Nock also really wonders if he's gonna get what he wants as he gets knocked to the floor. He later says how he wanted to be the Prince of Rats, but all Orlok wanted was his bride. The penny clearly drops for him, you know, the knocking on your door telling you what's going on, but in the end he still continues to serve Orlok. Back home we see how Thomas is now sick, just like how Ellen was. The roles are reversed here, though she understands what's going on. The shadow of Orlok then expands over the city in a stunning shot with shadows running deep throughout. The shadow was such an iconic piece of cinema in the original, and it highlights how he now has a hold of the city. We then see Mrs. Harding leave her children, unaware of the harrowing events about to unfold. They plead for her to this day, and it ties in with the idea that children are more in touch with their sixth sense. They haven't been battered down by the adults who've told them to think a certain way, and thus they've been able to sense what's coming. This was a big theme in the others, in which the children were able to see ghosts. Then there's something that feels like a reference to the poster from that, as we have Anna walk the house with the lamp. Ellen then says that she wants to stay the night with her, and they believe a crucifix can help. Again, it ties in with belief and how we often tell ourselves things to cope with fear. I did notice how just before speaking with Orlok, she went to the window and didn't have this necklace on her. Anna didn't have it either, and this may have left both open. Her husband at this time knows with the doctors, and he doesn't believe a single supernatural thing's happening. This is supplemented by Franz, who says how he's seen things that would make Isaac Newton crawl back into his mother's womb. He's of course one of the most famous scientists of all time, and he also discovered gravity.
Samo imaš veće šanse da šokiraš neprijatelja.
Faith, science, history, and art. That latter point is namely with the German Expressionism movement, which we see laced throughout the movie. Expressionism came with the idea that art should make you feel rather than just recapturing a moment. Up until then, you know, we'd had portraits, battlefields, and things that were heavily realistic. However, pieces like Edvard Munch's The Scream, they were made to evoke emotion. Even the original movie Nosferatu, it tapped into that German Expressionism movement. Horror was an emerging genre, and it was interesting a piece of film could make you feel fear.
Već pola levela sam izgubio danas. Pola levela, vrate, što je tako.
Koji si level, 90?
Really about what you feel, and it clearly rips off the art world. This also extended into romanticism, which often had figures of women in bed. Some of the most famous pieces depict a demon on top of them, and it's clearly
može se doda još neki pasiv poen.
A to
5 pasiv poena još, to ti jedno 20.000 damage.
Reminded me of the plagues of Egypt. They were sent to convince the pharaoh to change his mind and basically just act as the wrath of God. Those plagues included swarms of insects,
Jebe mi se koji sam level, ne idem na takmičenje, nego znam zbog čega to govorim.
Vampires also hung a flood, and that
To sam ja Nenad rekao, nema maratona tu.
being killed, which might play off the first son curse. The Hardings are also expecting their first son, so it could be tying into that. Doorways are even painted with crosses, which is similar to the markings from the Bible. So lots of things tying together, and the next day we see the plague spread. Anna also describes it as suffocating, and she seemingly has a connection to Orlok. She asks what this insufferable darkness is, and it also helps to highlight how strong that Ellen is. She's able to withstand Orlok's power, whereas everyone else just falls victim to it. Harding's frustration then comes to a crescendo at this moment. He sees his wife and throws Ellen and Thomas out, and is insistent he did everything he could. However, Ellen simply says he tied her up, and it highlights how uncaring he was. Personally though, I don't think he's a bad dude. It's just very clear he was completely out his depth. Franz then manages to locate the book that Nock used, and they work out that Nosferatu must return to its Earth. They're unaware of what will happen if he doesn't, but it highlights he can be defeated. Ellen and Thomas then discuss Orlok, and she ends up becoming possessed. He's belittled by her, she chastises him for leaving her, and now Orlok haunts her dreams. On the surface, we can also look at the idea of satisfaction and how women require it in many ways. Though Thomas thought he was satisfying his wife by buying her a house with maids, she really needed something else beyond that. Orlok satiates her sexual desires, and this is why she craves him in the night. We also get one of the standout shots where Lily Rose Depp does her best Undertaker impression. Great acting. As they make love, Thomas sees a bloodied vision of Ellen, which we saw earlier at night, but this time it's in colour. Franz then looks into the book, which appears ancient, and it describes the vampire. We see a drawing of a woman with Nosferatu, which is essentially the scene at the end of the movie. It ties into those romanticism pictures and basically sets up the ending. It explains how the maiden will give herself willingly and builds upon the horse scene that we discussed earlier. Now while this is going on, we see as Harding sleeps with a pistol. I wonder, right, if this was again a reference to Coppola's Dracula, as guns were used throughout the movie, which is a reach, but it's worth pointing out. However, he's put under a spell and can't wake up, and thus Anna has to go to her children. She sees her kids violently killed in one of the brutalest scenes I've witnessed since Joaquin Phoenix started singing in Joker 2. At the funeral, he watches the coffins get carried, and though it's not really an Easter egg yet, it reminded me a lot of Nosferatu Nosferatu carrying his coffin in the original. Like, it looks so goofy that he was just lugging it around everywhere, but I liked it. Like, just carrying it under his arm, walking about. Speaking of coffins, they then discuss how they need to go to Orlocks. However, Alvin secretly laid out a plan with Ellen, and instead this is just a distraction. Similar to how Thomas kept Orlock away from his wife, he needs to also do that in the night. Though they could do this in the day, they need to wait tonight so Orlock can go to Ellen. This is the only way to stop the plague, and it's the only path to salvation. Symbolically, you could see giving into what we crave as being something that leads to freedom. Instead of repressing it, we can be who we are, and ultimately this leads to salvation. When it comes to the plan though, Harding's gone missing, and he succumbs to the plague mourning his son. Like, are you sure it was even the son, mate? Because I don't know if they had the technology to tell you in advance back then. This is all just part of Orlock's plan though, and it's further isolating Ellen. It's basically a manipulative boyfriend's tactics in which he's isolated from those around her. I'm guessing his hope is she'll be like she was originally, completely alone, and therefore open to his comfort. The bodies of the Hardings also resemble the pair at the end, and Thomas looks upon both in both scenes. He really loses everything, and he's such a tragic character. But hopefully his mate left everything to him, and yeah, go get yourself a new wife, Deciding they must strike in the night though, they then head to Orlock's house, filled with rats. According to IMDb trivia, Defoe had a scene with almost 2,000 of them in it. The crews talked about how the rats stank, and a mixture of real and CGI ones were used. Perspex trays were used to herd the rats around, and Eggers said how none of them were lost, which was apparently quite a feat. As they go in the tomb, the fire keeps the rats away, and it's very akin to Indiana Jones. The bait and switch is then revealed as Knock is the one lying in the coffin. It's also played on the typical conventions of the genre, as we expect Orlock to be there. However, it highlights that all Orlock cares about is Ellen. Getting a play on that iconic shadow shot we mentioned earlier, it all builds this climax. Now this shadow again has been seen in a lot of different horrors, and at one point was even referenced in The Shining. Here in the wedding dress, in the end it's Ellen who's empowered. Whereas before she was repressed sexually, here she uses it to achieve her own ends. Ellen uses her body to trick Orlock, and he's unable to resist. Also love how just before the pair kiss, they're shot in the same way as when he went to her with the deal. This also feels like a reverse of The Witch, which involved the protagonist making a deal with the devil. There though she lost out, whereas here it leads to her winning. Getting it on, we then see him feed on her, and though the mornings come, he can't resist her body. Earlier he said he was an appetite and nothing more, which explains why he ignores his own self-preservation. Instead of being vaporized like what's typically shown, we then see his blood pours out his eyes. Ellen had this luck throughout the movie, and in hindsight it showcased her foresight. She was actually predicting his death, which was gonna be at her hands. The idea of tears running from his eyes also creates the imagery of sadness. In the end, she holds Thomas's hand and dies surrounded by lilacs. Foresight makes it clear why she was so disgusted with lilacs at the start, and there she of course mentioned the wedding. This is basically what's happened in the end, and yeah, again, it just nicely plays really well when you go back on a second watch. The shot of her holding them even looks like a bride holding a bouquet. This was them consummating their union, but she broke hers in a willing sacrifice. It's also possible that the tears tied to Vlad himself. When putting together the video, our editor Matt came across a website discussing an affliction Vlad was thought to have had. Due to a protein in his tear ducts, he may have actually cried blood. Website Popular Mechanics discovered this detail, and it could possibly build into this moment. Till death do they part, and the ending also plays up the motif Death in the Maiden. We see her body entwined with his skeleton, which is also how that's sometimes depicted. This idea was also prominent in German art specifically, which fits in with the setting of the movie. Now Ellen could have been a simple helpless maiden throughout, but she's given much more agency and is the real protagonist of the movie. She's none of this heavy doom and lingering spectre of death for a while now, realizing she's gonna be ignored by most, she takes it upon herself to tackle the monster. Only when she throws off the shackles as expected of a woman sage is she able to save the entire city and her husband. So it's a really nice ending, and also my guy looks like he skipped leg day like every day of his life ever. Either way, Eggers has crafted a faithful take on the iconic movie that he's thought about his entire life, and that has basically inspired his career. Looking back at his life and doing research, I even saw that he did a school play on the original. So the guy's been wanting to work on this for a while, and yeah, what he delivered, I think something special. Though the pacing, you know, it is a bit off at times, the look and feel of the movie is